The story begins with a person awakening while lying on the floor in his own garbage. He passed out due to exhaustion from overworking. As they started to lose consciousness, everything went dark. At the Magic Academy, a teacher found Sawadi Shankar in the hallway. He said that he had been hearing many strange things about him, like how he was a stage play fanatic or how he couldn't use any of the offensive magic despite being a man. But his restoration support magic was better than his seniors. If he was a woman, he might get a call from the army or the capital, or he could be a noble woman. He was a kind person, but as a commoner, having himself enrolled in this academy was already an amazing feat by itself. He then asked if he was free now, as he wanted to discuss restoring a spine to normal using restoration magic. Sawadi felt like he should escape from this conversation right now, so he refused by saying that he needed to help his father at home. The teacher seemed to buy his excuse and left there. He let out a breath with relief. Sawadi was 11 years old and he was the third son of the Shankar, a merchant family with political connections, a commoner who could use magic. He was a former company from who died from overworking, a reincarnated person, and he decided to have his best life by using the knowledge from his past life. But when he thinks about it, most of the things that he came up with already exist in this world. And his cheat skill, his ability to use offensive magic, was 0. In return, he excels at support and restoration magic. So in a way, it balances out his lack of skill at offensive magic. In this world, all people in power could use magic, but for a man, only the ones who could defeat the opponent with offensive magic get recognition from society. So he has 0 chances in the political contest. Regardless, he was the son of a huge business owner now, and he didn't want to be a corporate drone anymore. Someday he was planning to build a giant theater and spend his life slouching down on the best seat while watching a play and doing nothing. In order to achieve his goal, he had come up with a new business plan. With this city's situation coupled with his position as the son of this land's celebrity, he came up with a business that makes use of both to the fullest. While he was walking, Pickles and Vongo came and greeted him. They informed him that they reached their goal for the day. He compensated them for their work. The world's currency was 1 copper coin equivalent to 1,000 yen, 1 silver coin equal to 10,000 yen, and 1 gold coin equal to 100,000 yen. Currently, he earns about 10 gold coins per month. When he subtracted them from their monthly expenses and reserved funds, he got 2 gold coins as his profit. Right now he had 2 slaves, Pickles and Vongo. They don't get any wages, but he gives them allowance and pays for their regular meal. Even though he loved some terms, he still felt overwhelmed by the travel expenses and cheap lodging. The business plan that he came up with was buying cheap slaves and then taking a cut from their work as adventurers. He promised to make a shack for them in the courtyard and asked them if they had any special requests. 1 year ago, his servant came and asked him if he was sure about it. He had told his father about his plan, and he had been saving up his allowance for the past 10 years to cover today's expenses, so everything should be fine. An old man came and thanked him for waiting. Without further ado, he introduced the cheap, young, and defective female slaves to him, and asked if he would like to buy them. Besides buying defective slaves so he could get them cheap, they get healed with his magic, and they can repay him their favor. The slave merchant can clean his stock, and the society gets a new workforce, so everyone gets a benefit. He decided to go with the centaur girl who had bad eyes and hind legs. His servant wondered what he was going to do with her. He cut her body a little, and it seemed like she can't feel the stab, which was probably a spinal cord injury. He then healed the cut he made with restoration magic and told her to get up. She tried to stand up and was shocked that her leg was moving. Sawadi removed the root cause, but she still needed rehabilitation. She thanked him for having her and promised to do her best. And so he brought this centaur slave named Pickles back to his house, and every day, he let her eat to her heart's content. Her leg treatment also continued. During the day, even when she had to force herself, she would walk around the courtyard, and during the night he would nurse her with his magic again. He wouldn't forget to take care of her mental health. He washed her body in the bathroom as well as brushing her coat. One day he brought her to a workshop that was owned by an old man he knew. They had come to pick up her glasses. When Sawadi looked at her, he noticed that her genes were perfect even though it was only been 2 weeks. The cause of Pickles' bad eyesight was a blessing from a mole god. She could dig a hole faster, she was good at swimming and also good at smelling. But her vision was bad, and it was a useless blessing for a centaur. Her glasses fit perfectly, and it seemed like she loved it. Her eye condition wasn't something that could be fixed with Sawadi's magic, so she had so. When they left the workshop, he asked her how the world looked to her now, and her response was crying her eyes out. On her first day of being an adventurer, they checked everything and warned her to not overdo herself. He told her to hand over the letter to the guild's reception desk, and if she needed any money, she could use everything in the pouch. With that, his plan of buying cheap slaves and then taking a cut from their work as adventurers started to roll. Pickle and Vongo were working in harmony together. The speak thrower tool that Sawadi gave Pickle was so good and always hit the bullseye, but the darts Vongo got weren't really a killing tool. They pierced through, but the enemies could still run away. She advised her to tell him. Bongo really respected Sawadi because he saved his life, and she thinks she wouldn't be there without him. She didn't remember what happened after she was sold. Sawadi said that when harpies can't fly, their blood would rot and they would die, so she supposed that she was dying. Since becoming his slave, she was well fed, and her wings were also grown back using his magic. After her wings grew to their full size, he practiced flying non-stop from morning to evening just so she could fly again. It was hard and she had lots of failures. Even so, Sawadi always looked after her with his magic. One day, her hard work paid off and she started to fly. Since then, she had been working at the guild as his master servant with a younger slave Pickle, who was like a little sister to her. They were the only people who could support Sawadi, and they were both dedicated to this mission. If one day he fell broke, Pickles and she would be the ones who would put food on their table. The other adventurers were pretty satisfied and grateful for their hard work in the field, and they all seemed to like them. Pickles was glad she came to Torquiva because everyone here was so nice. She wanted to be like them one day, to be able to teach something to others or help others. Good cooperation was a must for adventurers, so they helped each other with the things they couldn't do by themselves. The current Pickle was no longer a paralyzed little girl who had to stay outside the house and sit down freezing on a corner of the field. She wasn't alone anymore. She felt grateful for the people around her. She wanted to be stronger and be able to do many things. Just like the time when Sawadi bought a slave, she wanted to live in this city with Vongo because adventurers cannot live by themselves. It had been about half a year since the adventurer party that Sawadi managed had 2 members, and the business was still going pretty well. But he wanted to earn more so he could have a breather after he graduated from the Magic Academy. The business was generating money, but it wasn't fast at all, which brought them back to the slave shop again. Pickles was excited to see who would join them this time. During Sawadi's visit to buy Van Gogh, he was eagerly asked if he would sell Pickles. He had no plan on doing that though. The old man came and informed him that they had finished the preparation. He saw the slaves and decided to take them all. One of the girls was dying, but it shouldn't be a problem since he had healed a spine at the academy before. Their members had gotten increased significantly, so he was hoping to make a lot of money. 3 weeks later, all the slaves were practicing, and it seemed like one of them was a little tired. Sawadi had been giving them treatment. Mince, the black-haired girl, was a former soldier. Since she was a lizard folk, her regeneration was incredibly fast. She was strong and could endure punches as well as slashes. She was also resistant to fire and poison but was weak against cold. Roast was a former adventurer. She was a fishman and she was energetic and strong-willed. Although she had been beaten twice by Mince, she was able to connect with anyone and everyone thanks to her background as an adventurer. Lastly, a former merchant apprentice, Chicken. She had problems with her internal organs and almost died. Having her back to normal with his magic was a win in his book. At first, she was meant for non-physical jobs, but since she was sold during her merchant training, her skill was still questionable. He intended to teach her how to help with his family's work. It seemed like his family's accountant was interested in her. After some back and forth, he agreed to lend Chicken to him during the busy season. Sawadi was tired from using so much magic, so he decided to rest while the others were working outside. Later, Chicken came to Sawadi begging him in tears to not let her join them again. He felt sorry for them, so when he banned intensive training on the day off and only allowed it once every 3 days. One day, a man named Lazuli came. He said that the Holy Relief Institution where he belonged was short of capable healers, and the situation was quite alarming. Lately, he had been getting more and more requests like that old man who wanted to be a slave so he would heal him. Another old man would give his daughter if he agreed to heal him. All of them had just been old men. He told everyone to show Lazuli the exit. She came and asked who that man was. She grabbed the man and took him out of the room while he was saying some nonsense. There had been a misconception about Sawadi being perceived as an altruistic man, even though he made every slave he healed work for him. Investing in adventurers in this city was pretty popular since this city was located in such a strategic place. Right now he has 4 members and he gets about 50 gold coins per month. After deducting it from the expenses, 10 gold coins per month was his profit. It felt good to make money, but he still had a long way to go compared to his family's business. Several days later, 2 women came and introduced themselves. One of them was a 17-year-old maiden named Seal, who was good at singing and dancing. The other was a 19-year-old maiden named Hunt, and she was good at poetry and sewing. His brother gave Hunt and Sealy to him after he learned that he had been looking for slaves. He asked them if they could cook and took them as the cook of his adventurer team. He was planning to sell a novel dish at a food stall during Thanksgiving in 2 months and they were going to help him develop it. Sawadi was sure they came prepared to have intercourse with him, but he had no interest in anyone other than his future wife and bar hostesses. If they had any relationship like that, things might get complicated like an illegitimate child. He didn't want to be like his older brother who got his head cracked open by his wife. They got the ingredients and started preparing a menu for Thanksgiving. They were going to make pasta, but unlike any of the home-cooked recipes in this world, They weren't making short pasta like Fired of Baked. He said that they were going to make pasta noodles called spaghetti. First things first, he talked about the steps. Step 1 was to knead the dough, and the second step was to flatten the kneaded dough using a custom-made machine. They needed to put the flattened dough on the blade's side and turn the handle. With that, they started making it. But they had failed several times, and the last thing he cooked had caused mass food poisoning. He knew that he wasn't talented at cooking, so the solution was to let other people cook for him. Slaves can't betray their master, therefore his effort to train them wouldn't betray him either, as he thought. At night, he was still thinking about the pasta. He thought it would be easier for them, and even though they started before noon, he wasn't expecting they would keep failing till late. Suddenly, the girls called his name with an excited tone because they finally managed to make spaghetti. Now it was Sawadi's turn. He had made it before, too. It was a foolproof recipe. He boiled water in a pot, and when it started boiling, he added salt. Then add the pasta into the boiling water and stir. He then added cooking oil to a frying pan and fried smoked meat together with sliced garlic. When the garlic started to brown, he added the chili pepper and a ladle of pasta water. After the sauce got thicker, he added the cooked pasta into the sauce and quickly mixed it. After mixing, one pepperoncino was ready to serve. The girls tried, and it seemed like he made it all right. He tried a bite and found it a bit salty, so he wanted some water. While he was eating, pickles, vongo, roast, and mince came because of the delicious smell coming from the kitchen. They tasted the pasta, and it was so good that they wanted him to make more. Then Chicken and his boss came thanks to the smells. And so they made lots of pepperoncino that night. Meanwhile, at the Magic Engineering Laboratory, there was a man. He was Chris Holden, an undergraduate student under Professor Marino of the Magic Academy's Magic Engineering Lab. He had been appointed to tutor a problem student in this lab. One day, Sawadi joined their research lab because he was interested in cheap working labor. Chris found his objective clear and easy to understand. But it wasn't as easy as it appeared. It wasn't like he could just transmute something into gold. He decided to teach him the very basics, which was creating a magic golem. As an aspiring researcher, he was planning to work in the capital and do research on fusion magic there. When Sawadi managed to make it, he was shocked because it was impossible to get it right on the first try. But when Sawagi thanked him with gratitude, he was taken aback for a moment. For an 11-year-old, just being able to change the color of magical elements already puts one on a genius level, and he was able to do that after watching him once. On top of it, he managed to get the ratio right too, and he didn't even realize that he was doing great by himself. Chris wasn't even sure if Sawadi really needed him as his teacher. In the next scene, Sawadi is praised by Astoma. He promised to keep doing his best to be a student that he could be proud of. When he left his room, he felt tired. As expected of the country's naval battle hero, his presence was so strong. He had once parted the sea using repulsion magic just to beat the seabed labyrinth master down. He came from a pure blue blood lineage, yet he still sought out and acknowledged the existence of the merchant-born commoner who could use attack magics at all like him. Mages were considered as privileged people in this country. So it wasn't an exaggeration to say mages rule this country. There was social segregation between these privileged mages and commoners like him. They didn't live in the same world with those mages. While he was walking in the hall, he bumped into one of the students who called him one of those three. Sawadi was content being a commoner. Becoming a magician was not as simple as some might believe. To begin with, the physical appearance difference between the mages and the rest of the people, such as race and facial features, was significant enough to differentiate them. It was technically impossible to adapt to their society in a single generation. As a result, even nobles and wealthy individuals must pass along their magician's bloodline through generations. The same thing happened with the Schenker, of course. That is how he gained the ability to utilize magic. His survival strategy was just not sticking his nose in the air around the strong. Two students asked him about his results. They were Ginny and Ella, his friends from the same year. They were all commoners who could use magic and love theater. Even though he took the helm of reconstructing his house, he couldn't get any introduction letter for applying for a job. They started to talk about the things they had applied. They can't be a sailor, teacher, or anything, so it was hard for them to pick a job. But luckily, Sawadi already had his dream. He was going to let his future self take care of the future problems. They decided to talk about their future later, and went to watch a play at the Houdini Theater in the West District. Later on, we see Roast was slicing a monster with passion, but it seemed like the monster was resisting. She made another attack while Mince was watching her, admiring and relieved that she was on the same team with her. Pickles and Vongo came to Roast's help and took down the monster with ease. They safely went back home and told Sawadi what happened. Sawadi realized that a rampage bird wyvern was too soon for them, and they should stick with flying boar. But Roast wanted to be stronger. She knew that her master was planning to make his own army. He could have sold his slaves after he healed them, but instead, he intentionally made them fight like this. Mages like Sawadi were in a different league than the slaves. They were generally not afraid to do immoral things. She had faced an expelled mage from the Magic Academy once back when he was in a mercenary group. In an instant, half of her teammates were frozen in ice, and in the end, half frozen her. She ripped his throat open using her teeth. Mages were in general a bunch of lunatics for roast. Vongo grabbed Sawadi's arm and said the word praise, so he started to praise her. Several days after defeating the bird wyvern, Mince and her teammates were hunting a red-cheek fox, but then encountered an armored longhorn beetle with 0% chance to escape from it. Roast told Vongo to send out a SOS while Pickles was firing a flash grenade and then a smoke bomb. Everyone covered their eyes when she threw the bomb. Mince asked if their aid was there, but they were still on their way. Suddenly, something came and destroyed the beetle. While they were in shock trying to figure out who that was, Mince knew that it was the Chivalric Order's White Dragon Knight, Arcelica, the Stardust. Everyone was safe. Mages were indeed strong. They totally live in a different dimension than them. A few days later, Sawadi cooked them something that they had never seen before. He told Mince to give it a try. Since the fight with the armored longhorn beetle, her left arm had grown back properly. While she was recuperating, she practiced how to use the chopsticks that Sawadi taught her. She tasted the meal and found it so rich and delightful. She was pleased that she was eating such good food even though it wasn't her birthday. She considered sharing them but decided to eat them all by herself and didn't even leave any crumbs on the plate. The Thanksgiving came and it was a traditional festival celebrated twice a year. Seely, together with her fellow slaves, were running a food stall and also performing a stage play. She noticed that Mince kept looking at the pocket watch that Sawadi gave her. She won't let anyone touch it, and every night she was polishing while smiling like an idiot. Now it was time to perform their stage play, so they prepared. Seely announced to everyone that they were going to perform a play titled Once Upon a Pepperoncino. Many people were watching, so she felt nervous. She recalled how Sawadi showed her how to perform, which she said she understood, but she actually didn't. She tried to mimic the way Sawadi taught her, but it seemed like the crowd wasn't really interested. Used to think that Sawadi was brilliant and versatile for planning a stage play to attract customers while also promoting Schenker's business, but she was regretting it now. Roast found that Fire Lizard Woman so boastfully loud and also realized that she paid one less coin using a trick. Everyone wanted to buy them now because Pickles and Roast was amazing and they were performing without a hint of stage fright. They were also in sync with each other like it was just second nature for them. People were eagerly wanting to buy packs of those. Back when they were practicing, Seal was upset that she wasn't getting it. Pickles came and gave her something sweet to motivate. While she was eating the treat, Roast gave her a glass of drink. While she was about to spin her drink, she wondered when the rehearsal was going to end. She then realized that Roast gave her alcohol. She said that she had been drinking since morning. When she looked at Vongo, she saw her drinking too, so she decided to drink it too. People were loving their play. They finished their performance happily and successfully. Sela was happy that Sawadi was doing all those for the sake of them getting familiar quickly with everyone and to make them get along with each other. In the next scene, Sawadi announced that they were going to hold an inauguration ceremony for each of the executive positions of the clan to a bunch of girls. Since he was making a lot of money now, he decided to start a new business. First, through his father's connection, he bought a ruined factory at a cheap price. Then he bought injured slaves from slave shops and healed them using his magic. This time around, he got a large influx of new slaves, which naturally brought in various talents like a tailor, shopkeeper, accountant, and craftsman. They were grouped as general labor slaves and would get dispatched to places requesting their skills, and they would get a daily allowance. And for the former adventurers and since those rowdy people were not suited for delicate jobs, they were working for him as an adventurer at the guild. Therefore, he divided the 4 slaves who had been working for him as adventurers into 3 teams and gave them a position, and they were leading many adventurers' personnel. He then established an adventurer clan, the Magical Schenker Group. Slave Mince was the captain of the clan. Roast was the vice captain, Pickles was the squad leader, and her vice was Vongo. The other slaves cheered for them and they started the celebration. 2 cooks came and brought their specialty dishes, meat pepperoncino and cheese pepperoncino. Spaghetti was getting known as pepperoncino instead, but Sawadi was the only one who found it weird, so he didn't say anything. He watched people enjoying and celebrating and he couldn't help but smile. Before he even realized it, his slaves had built deep friendships with people in this city by themselves, and they seemed so happy. That day, he was convinced that the staffing agency business he just started would have a bright future. At the Magic Engineering Laboratory, Sawadi once again made another amazing creation, impressing Professor Marino. It wasn't about the performance or the aesthetic of the artificial beast, it was the improvement of convenience. Such a commoner's way of thinking was maybe something they could learn from. But artificial beasts were disposable magical beings, so they could just make them whenever they needed, as Chris said. But it wasn't unlikely that researchers like them get a request to produce a large number of artificial beasts. Even a simple one like the imp would require so much effort to produce at a big scale. After they get spent, they would need to make a new batch for replacement so they could give them this modular type artificial beasts and just replace the magic crystal when it gets spent. That way, it doesn't become a chore anymore. Sawadi was listening to their professors discussing while admiring them. When Chris asked how long it could last, Marino answered by saying they only needed to change the crystal once per day. That was amazing. He asked Sawadi if he wanted to start his student research project this term. Chris found it too early for Sawadi, but that was the reason why Chris was going to be his supervisor. They were going to have his name as one of the authors of the paper so they could avoid unnecessary noise. Chris seemed fine with it, since nothing good would come out from a commoner mage making an achievement or a contribution was good. He had no interest in getting famous after all. Everything settled, they were going to put Chris's name on the paper and start planning out the research right away. Since then, the research on modular-type artificial beasts has been progressing well. Before he realized it, a whole 2 years had zipped by. Speaking of research, it had led to the creation of modular-type dragons. His supervisor Chris and his other supervisor after she got called to the capital, and they would continue the research at the research lab there. He was hoping that he was going to enjoy a happy after-school, but while he was casually researching on reducing the production cost, he accidentally invented something extraordinary. They couldn't publish this finding yet, and they don't have anyone to be the supervisor. Since there was no one here, he decided to get people from outside. Marino knew that he was worrying but told him that he wouldn't send him to the capital unless he wanted to. A big invention like this was a pain for a commoner like Sawadi. Meanwhile, the girls were working hard. With Sawadi's current income, he didn't think he would fulfill his dream of constructing a theater before his school graduation. So to make more money, he took a slight risk. Under his headquarters, they dug a secret tunnel that connected this place to a dungeon outside the city. If he could create artificial beasts that could accumulate magic from their surroundings, he could also create artificial beasts that could generate magic crystals by accumulating magicules, making Sawadi able to create a magic crystal factory. But the yield was so much worse because the amount of magicules in the air was thin. Therefore, he decided to make use of the thick magicules of the dungeon across the river outside the city. Magic crystals were hard to come by and sell for a high price, but he had an inexhaustible source in his hands. All that aside, even though his slaves were obedient, maintaining their motivation was still important. He took out his megaphone and stated that anyone who ran out of buffs could see him and he would give them regeneration and enchantment buffs again. Allowances and boozes were just a paltry amount of money, so he shouldn't be afraid to use it more often. In the meantime, he opened a fancy coffee shop next to the headquarters for the sake of his slave welfare and as a business. He dressed his slaves in cute uniforms and had them be the cast members of the cafe, and it was pretty successful. At this point, he needed to come up with more different things because being the one who was responsible for the livelihood of those relented people was quite stressful. The next morning, everything was going well at the Adventurer Guild. People were getting their work done, and after a while, the place was almost empty. The girls were relieved that the morning's busy hours were over. Someone came and wanted to ask something, but then the girls realized that the usual girl wasn't there today. Today was Chicken's day off. Lately in the city, sitting in the outdoor area had become a status symbol, so she wanted to do that too. While she was sitting, a rabbit-fold girl, Elaf, came and asked if it was her day off. While they were chatting, Chicken was thinking about the rumor that Elaf getting hit by 5 men already. She envied her, but a slave who could think of having luxury goods was something that could only happen in the Schenker family, so she tried to control herself. Roast came and it seemed like she noticed that Chicken likes luxury items. She teased her, and while she was yapping about fashion, Roast noticed that she sounded like Sawadi when she talked about fashion. Before Chicken could say something, she noticed that Roast was wearing a high-class shirt and trousers. She explained that she never bought her own clothes, and she got them from people giving stuff to her. While Roast was explaining where she exactly got the clothes, Chicken teared up and couldn't stand it anymore. While she was running away, she felt so bad that she wasn't the one getting the clothes. She wanted to get hit on by men, have her own clothing shop and make a lot of fashionable good things and sell them to get a lot of money. Meanwhile, Sawadi was waiting for his new supervisor. Not so long later, a beautiful woman named Lola Salela came and introduced herself as the researcher who was going to start working in his lab today. She said hello to him and told him what a coincidence it was to meet him there. He was thinking the same and asked her if she liked to watch a play. Lola said she was pretty busy when she was still in the military, and ever since she came to that city, she had too much time. Miss Lola Salela was a 21-year-old ex-army researcher from the capital, and also she was 20 cm taller than Sawadi. Sawadi couldn't help but think both yesterday and last week were a great coincidence to meet her at the same theater 3 times in a row. He was wondering if it was really a coincidence. Lola told Sawadi that she was free, and if he wanted she could show him around the city, then they decided to go. They went to a cafe and Lola was telling Sawadi about her memories from the army. She said they had pushed through behind the enemy lines and arrived right below the flying battleship. Then they had destroyed the ship into pieces using their ultimate weapon, a scorching hot explosive beam. She asked Sawadi what kind of expression they had on their faces when it happened. He thought that felt like hell, and thought about what kind of torture she was subjecting him to. Lola was suspiciously trying to get closer to a commoner student. She must have found out about the crystal factory. Sawadi thought he had his suspicions that she was an investigator sent by the military. They went to several different shops just for her to buy a single coat. Then Sawadi accompanied her, observing the chivalric order for hours under the cold weather with the explosive noises and flying pebbles, and now, there they were. Lola continued to tell his stories from the army. She said that was the time she received the Sword Eagle medal. Even in the army, less than 100 people have received the medal. Sawadi thought it was awesome as someone who could proudly tell such stories. He wondered how many enemies she had killed. Lola asked Sawadi if he liked stage play or not, and asked him what kind of story he was into lately. He thought he should have answered that as easy to digest as possible while also not creeping her out. Sawadi said he loved expelled stories. The genre was invented by the genius screenwriter Mechius. There have been plays like Expelled from a Noble Family, Expelled from an Academy, Expelled from an Adventurer Group, and many more. Lola asked him if Mechius was the eldest son of Count Warren. She thought she had met him at a party before. He asked her what kind of person he was because he was a big fan of him. She said she wanted to save that story for next time and asked him next week right after a play. He said he was going to book the seats. Then she moved closer to him, touched him on the shoulder, and told him she had so much fun today. 1 week later, Sawadi hurriedly brought Lola to a shop and she asked if he was being so impatient, so he apologized for that. But he had been wanting to learn about Mechius for the past week. They got their coffee, sat down, and Lola asked Sawadi if that day was just for the Mechius story. She asked when the story was over then if he wouldn't need her anymore. He said he didn't mean to do that. She said he was different from the stories she had heard before. She said she heard from 2 people who moved to the capital that there was this one commoner who was inventive. He excelled at school and research, but he couldn't use any of the offensive magic. Besides, as Lola heard, he was living in obscurity. However, Lola said that when she met him, he was just a boy of his age who used his free time to study and do research and was really into theater as a hobby. Lola wanted to get straight to the point and asked Sawadi if he was the one who invented the modular-type artificial beast. Lola said the secret about the factory was still safe. Commoners usually do that to protect themselves, so she could understand the reason. She said regardless of their nobility status, bright minds who had done good for the country should be acknowledged. In short, she said, the country wanted him to become a nobleman. Sawadi asked her why. She said his research had saved military spending by 10–11%. Lola said therefore his talent had gained their interest. He asked if that was what happened, and she said also, luckily he was the 3rd son. She said 13 and 21, the age gap was slightly big, so she said she became his spouse. So if he didn't like the idea, he must have felt free to tell Lola. Sawadi was in shock and thought if what she meant by becoming a nobleman was by marrying her. Sawadi told Lola that she was from a really good noble family, so he was sure that her family wouldn't like her to marry a commoner. She told Sawadi not to worry because she got kicked out of her house. Therefore, she was pretty much her own person. Sawadi said he didn't mean to pry, but asked her why. She said she had gotten magic organ failure from overusing it and told Sawadi people who lost their magic organ could no longer use magic, nor could they give birth to a child with strong magic. Besides, she said once the organ shuts down, it wouldn't heal back. However, Sawadi told her that he could heal the magic organ. She was extremely surprised and asked him how he could do that and told him that she was becoming more and more interested in him. She asked if her marriage proposal was understood. Sawadi thought it was the country putting forward the marriage proposal. There was no way a commoner like him could turn it down. He was thinking that she was pretty and she had nice butts. Lola asked Sawadi if she could have a few conditions. She wanted to have her own theater and asked him if he was sure wanted to marry her. She said she wanted to get married, but she didn't want to have a one-sided relationship. To tell Sawadi the truth, Lola said, up till now, she had distanced herself from sexual romance, so she wanted him to teach her everything about it. However, she said and caressed his head, she said she thought of him like a cute little brother. Sawadi questioned if he should have been happy hearing that. It was the morning of another day and Lola had woken up from a nightmare of war. She wished she could have just erased her memories from those days. It was the day that Lola would have a date with her small fiancé, so she was trying to get ready. She asked her servant Mion if she should have pushed her breasts up a bit more, but Mion said it was enough. Lola said a bit more wouldn't hurt. She said his fiancé would look at her butt from behind, so if she should have said that, she knew he was looking at them and showed him more. Servant Mion asked her not to show her posterior to anyone. Sawadi came and told her good morning, and Lola was thinking that Sawadi looked no different from his usual self. He told her that what they would be watching was titled War. Lola was thinking when it came to the theater, he looked so excited. Sawadi was so shy that he could not look at Lola's face. Lola thought pushing her breasts up was the correct move. They arrived at the theater, watched it, and then they went to eat something. Lola told him that she had never seen any of those foods before. He said his cooks had done their absolute best to make his ideas into reality. She asked if it was okay to book the whole cafe just for her. He said it was fine and asked her not to worry and to try her food. She liked everything, and then Mince came to tell his master Sawadi that his ride was ready. Then Lola saw a crowd and asked Sawadi if they were his family's personal troops. He said they were his slave adventurers. Since it was late, he asked them to guard Lola and Sawadi's home. Lola thought that they seemed to be trained for different things too. Mince seemed ready to die for her master, and Lola couldn't imagine slaves having that level of loyalty before. She thought and said she had found another charming point about her small fiancé. The next chapter started with Sawadi's lecture about magic organ restoration. He told Lord Qualis, "A magic organ is an internal organ that animals have for gathering magicules. It captures magicules in space and stores them inside the organ. After a certain degree over several years, the unused stored magicules inside the organ will transform into crystals. These crystals are called magic crystals, which have become an indispensable source of energy in this day and age of human society. Mages use these magicules to create magic. From fighting to restoration, they use magic in every aspect of their life. They use magic to flush the toilet, to illuminate places, to write a paper, and many more. Using magic over the limit of the organ will destroy the organ and make the person unable to use magic anymore. That will be the end of a mage." Lord Qualis thanked Sawadi for the lecture, but he asked if he really could restore a magic organ and said he wanted to see it. Sawadi apologized for keeping him waiting. Lord Qualis confirmed that Lola had no magic organ. Sawadi said he would start the surgery and then he would perform the procedure. 2 weeks ago, Miss Lola had seriously talked Sawadi through for many hours how special the magic organ restoration technique was, and the kind of troubles that awaited him ahead due to that fact. Lola had always thought it was just a part of the restoration magic, so she told Sawadi that he had 3 options. The first one was joining the military and becoming a magic organ restoration unit. The second choice was keeping that technique a secret. The last one was making this technique available and known only to certain people. Lola asked Sawadi which one he was going to pick. Sawadi said the first option was a big no, and he couldn't keep it a secret, as there were several people at school who already knew about it. He thought she already knew what he was going to pick. Sawadi thought in the end, as Lola's advice, he made the treatment available only to the veterans, and her treatment would lay the groundwork for that. Now it was hard to believe, but Sawadi really restored Lola's magic organ. While it was still weak, Major Lola's magic power was returning. Lord Qualis was invited by Miss Lola from the capital. He was an appraisal mage who was the trusted eyewitness. He was Sawadi's confidant on the capital's side of that plan. Lord Qualis told Sawadi to trust his fiancé and the people at the capital's military HQ. He said the profit from publishing was just razor thin, regardless of whether no one except he could do that, or the technique could be replicated by other people. Sawadi asked if the military would be happy to regain their personnel using the treatment. Lord Qualis told him losing a magic organ was not as simple a matter as it sounded. He said most of them couldn't bear the pain of having their magic power exhausted, and such pain would kill them in the process. Only people with strong will, like his fiancée Lola, could survive such a painful experience. Suddenly Lola woke up and asked Lord Qualis if he was trying to make her blush, and told them it felt funny that her magic organ was really back. Then she lit a cigarette. Sawadi was looking at Lola and was thinking what an amazing skill. Her way of using magic was extremely efficient. Lola told Sawadi that she was really grateful to have him as her fiancé, and then wanted to hug him. Lord Qualis found that action indecent to show in front of an elderly man. Lola told Lord Qualis to pardon them, but he should have let young people express their love to each other. Lord Qualis said anyway, and then told them the treatment would be done in that place. Patients would visit there one by one in secret, and the price would be determined by the patients themselves. Sawadi said he was okay with that decision. Lord Qualis told him that he would let him know when a patient was coming. Sawadi thought actually each time he finished treating a person, Lola would pay him 100 gold coins, which was roughly about then million yen. That was the amount she got per month from her pension. One day, another patient named Mr. Goskin came and told Sawadi that he lost his magic organ on a battlefield. Mr. Goskin said he had already retired from the army 10 years ago, but unlike him, his former superior looked youthful, and confidently said to Mr. Goskin that his health had been deteriorating and he was waiting to die. The superior told him there was a way to restore his magic organ. Mr. Goskin said they secretly headed toward a certain city called Torkiva. He was already in a condition where he couldn't even move his own legs to walk. He said with the help of his devoted wife, he finally arrived at the place where the mage who had restored the magic organ of several veterans, Sawadi Shenker, lived. Mr. Goskin said he had never heard about magic organ restoration or something similar until now. He said moreover, Sawadi's young appearance, which was not much different from their son who went to the military academy, made them feel a little bit anxious. However, he said they didn't have any other option. His wife and he were hoping against hope. All they could do was trust him. Sawadi told Mr. Goskin suspected that mages had large magic organs that easily dwarfed those of commoners. Sawadi said those large organs generate magic power that affects all parts of their body, including other organs and bones. That was why Sawadi thought might be the cause of Mr. Goskin's aging symptoms. Sawadi first wanted to start by recovering Mr. Goskin's poor overall health and restoring his physical condition to normal. On that day, Sawadi restored all of the teeth that had fallen before, and from that on, day in and day out, Mr. Goskin would eat healthy dye, do physical therapy, and get treatment using his magic. 1 week later, Mr. Goskin's wife asked his husband what he would want to do after his magic organ was restored. He said he maybe would smoke the cigar he had been keeping for 10 years. She said she didn't mean that, and asked him if he wanted to visit any places after that. He said they could go anywhere after that. She asked what about going to the Expo Commemoration Museum that they had been wanting to visit. He said it sounded good and wanted to go there soon after he was healed. She said not just that place, she wanted to go to many places together with him, even to the end of the world. Meanwhile, Sawadi interrupted their conversations and asked if he should have waited outside for a while. Then they smiled and told Sawadi that they didn't notice him there. He said he felt envious of their passionate love. Then he said he wanted to go straight to business. He asked if he wanted to start to restore his magic organ that day. The magic organ restoration was made, and Mr. Goskin lit his first cigarette after that, and told Sawadi he felt like he was finally coming home, and said he could not thank Sawadi enough. He said he would forever be greatly indebted to him. Sawadi told him not to worry about that, but he said he was going to bring something next time. Sawadi said he just wished him to get back to full health. Then he sent them off. Sawadi started to think about what to do when he got 100 coins this time. He thought he had more slaves now. Maybe he should have bought buildings on top of the tunnel and used them as ventilation, rest areas, as well as for business. He planned that Chicken would take care of choosing slaves with the right talent for that. She had been strangely motivated lately. He thought about starting a fish farm since currently, river fishes smelled like mud. When he was mumbling his thoughts, Lola saw him and told him that he was making an evil face and looked like a bandit boss. She couldn't even complain if he got killed outside because of that face. He asked if it was really that bad. Lola said people with that kind of face were the ones who trip over trivial things and die. Sawadi almost forgot his own goal, which was building his own theater. He thought he should have not been so hung up on making money. As we approach the end of the chapter, we see the shop where slaves work. Mamoy thought she had to finish tomorrow's stock before the day was over. Meanwhile, Nava came back and she bought food from the HQ. Nava said they sold another incense stand again, and with that, they sold 10 that month. However, Mamoy wanted to get even better so they could sell more stuff. Nava told her that she was going to do her best so she could paint her wooden handicrafts more beautifully, and they wouldn't be sold again. After they ate, they both got down to business and were chatting in the meantime. Mamoy told Nava that the fish they just ate now, she heard it came from ponds with tons of fish that the master made somewhere. She asked Nava if the master was an amazing person, like he would make a business out of anything. Nava said she heard the master bought another building on top of their tunnel. Mamoy said it would be nice if they could have used the tunnel to go to the HQ. However, for Nava, that could not happen because the tunnel was a secret after all. They were even restrained by magic, so they could not tell the secret to anyone else. Even their non-physical labor slave manager, Miss Chicken, had strictly told them that. Nava asked Mamoy if she had heard Roast slay one of a pair of rampage bird wyverns by herself. Mamoy said she hadn't heard it. Mamoy said their adventurer teams were like stars in the city. Nava wanted to be an adventurer too and asked Mamoy what about joining them. Mamoy said she would pass even though most of her injuries were healed by her master. She said being an adventurer was just dangerous and scary. Besides, she said she loved what she was doing. She had been trusted with a shop. It was super busy, but it was also super fun. Nava related to her and stated that once you were dead, it was over. Meanwhile, Jalin showed up with a group of people and called Mamoy and Nava. Mamoy said she was already done for the day, but she made that as a hobby. She said she just liked spending time there because that place was bright and warm. They agreed with her and had to leave after telling her to not overwork herself. Meanwhile, Nava decided to go. Then a couple of girls approached Mamoy and told her that they brought some leftovers from their shop. In the next scene, Professor Marino gives Sawadi the good news. The capital city was interested in that project and gave them a generous amount of research grants he had never seen before. Sawadi was flabbergasted. It was a proposal he mindlessly put together as a part of the Magic Crystal Independence Research Project so he could at least increase Miss Lola's research credit. It seemed like the proposal got sent to the capital city, and it came back with a huge sum of research grants along with an instruction attached to it that said conduct a long-distance demonstration from Torquiva to Luavuma. Professor Marino reminded him that they didn't have much time, so they had to start right away. Sawadi asked when was the deadline exactly, expecting that it would be at least 6 months, but unfortunately they only had 3 months, and it was on the day when they stopped all of the train services. Since that news dropped, Marino's lab was in shambles. As the supervisor of the project, He had to visit many places from morning until evening to prepare all the necessary work. As for Sawadi, he received a course exemption from Elder Estoma. Together with other fellow researchers, he became so absorbed with it that he would spend his days and nights doing research. 1 month later, they managed to move the wheel. Marino wasn't expecting it to be stopped by a small pebble, though. A perpetual engine was super low cost, so it made it had super low output. It took them several hours for the wheel to complete a single rotation, so Marino wasn't sure if they could use this engine to make the train. Sawadi explained that for the exterior they were going to be using parts from the existing magic train, and the engine itself would be just like the wagon's engine in theory. They divide the engine into the motor unit, the transmission unit, and the steering unit. Then they modularized the created artificial beasts and attached the wheels so it shouldn't be that hard. In terms of output, if they could standardize the quality and features of the beasts, while simultaneously determining the form factor, the output could be boosted. Marino suggested making the engine have the same output as the existing magic train engine, but it would be larger than the Academy, so that was frustrating. But they did manage to turn the wheels once, so that was still a major breakthrough. 3 months had passed and Sawadi was in the laboratory looking exhausted, but he was smiling while sipping his coffee because the perpetual engine train was completed. They somehow managed to finish the train and named it Perpetual Train. Currently, it needed 5 more locomotives to move a single passenger car, filled with VIPs from the military. Marino was indeed amazed by the vehicle, but Sawadi was still thinking about the low output problem they couldn't solve. However, he decided to not care about it because once the demonstration was over, it would be the capital city researchers' problem to solve. The demonstration started with Lola, and she informed everyone that the meters and gauges were working fine, and everything looked normal. Marino was thrilled, but Sawadi decided to assume the worst. The train started moving, but it seemed like it was moving incredibly slow. Sawadi already knew that it would be like this, so he wasn't surprised, but still, he couldn't help but feel uneasy about it. After some stressful hours of waiting, the perpetual train finally ran at a decent speed with the VIP guests and the completely worn-out Professor Marino towards its destination. Sawadi was playing cards with the guests and he was winning. The serene view seen from the car windows never failed to grab their attention. They also came across giant bugs during their trip, and some passengers were shooting those insects down using magic to kill time. The journey took them several hours than a normal magic train to finally arrive at Luavuma City. When they arrived, the demonstration was over, and everything was completed. While Professor Marino was shaking hands with the guests, Sawadi seemed tired. He could call this a success even though it had a lot of problems. The train will be towed back to Torquiva and dismantled there, so he decided to prepare himself. As a result, the train was taken over by the capital city to improve its speed, and a new transcontinental railroad was launched soon after. The railroad was named after the principal investigator, Frank Marino. It was Sawadi's first time seeing him this overjoyed. He was sure no one could feel sad after seeing this level of happiness. In the next scene, people saw Shankers all together and wondered what they were doing. They then noticed the 8-legged horse, which confused them. Sawadi was so embarrassed that he couldn't help but cover his face. Sawadi's second older brother, Shishriki, came and begged him to make a fast horse. He lied to someone named Fasalina that he was going to show her the horse. Sawadi refused at first, but when he heard that he could give him a slave who used to play a leading role in a famous theater, he changed his mind. After that, their long trip with Miss Lola and the other adventurer members started with the aim of riding the horse. Miss Lola wanted to have a horse like this too, but with a nicer color. Sawadi then wondered why Miss Lola made him wear shorts. She answered by saying that she loved how he looked and called him her adorable Sawadi. The others finally arrived and Rose noticed the tension being high right now. But then suddenly Mince noticed something in the sky. She immediately told Sawadi to escape because it was a Titan flying centipede. Sawadi instructed Vongo to make the SOS when Miss Lola told Mince to hold her cigarette for her. She started to walk toward the centipede and destroyed it with one move. The girls were shocked, but Sawadi wasn't. Mince handed her cigarette to Lola while stating how amazing she was. The others also started to praise her and wanted her to tell them about the battle stories she had. Miss Lola started to tell them while Sawadi was lying on the ground resting. Sawadi felt like he had something that he had to do these days. He thought about the possible reasons for that and concluded that he now had more free time after being so busy with a big project for so long. His brother asked where was his fiancée and teased him. Sawadi dodged his joke and explained that she was having a tea party with other neighborhood housewives. That was the duty of the head of a family. While his niece was hugging him asking to play together, his brother stated that he wasn't a child anymore and was about to start his own family, and added that he needed to think about his responsibilities. Sawadi didn't seem to care about what he was saying and talked with his little niece. He then went to the kitchen and called Hunt. He was thinking of developing a new menu. He didn't know when, but it was not soon. The other girls were talking about Chikeen. They seemed to like her personality and the way she dresses and were teasing each other for not having a boyfriend for specific reasons. Hunt interrupted them and commented that slaves like them wouldn't be able to enjoy this better than average life if it wasn't for their master Sawadi. Sawadi then went to the tunnel and he was informed that they had 12 units of artificial beast-producing magic crystals. They could produce roughly up to 100 magic crystals per day. Sawadi wanted them to store all of them. The tunnel was completed. Magic crystal production was running well and he was in negotiation with his father about the trading route. He felt the relaxation of getting closer to his dream. Chikin mentioned that the size of the crystals was slightly larger than the one on the market, so was going to adjust the size. She noticed that something was off with Sawadi, and when she asked, he told her that it wasn't important and went back to work. In the next scene, Sawadi gathered everyone and announced that he was going to become an adult soon and would get married. But he reminded them that just as he would take responsibility as an adult, he would take responsibility for their lives as well. He wanted to offer everyone the freedom to have their own families and find their own happiness, but he couldn't entirely release them from being his slaves. He still had to uphold their pledge of quiet and obedience, because their clan had many trade secrets to protect. Those who had worked tirelessly in the clan for 3 years, on the other hand, would be entitled to a regular salary if they chose to remain. He also informed them that they were free to own a house and find a job anywhere in Torquiva, and they were allowed to get married. He then called Pickles, Vongo, Mince, Roast, and Chicken, and announced to them that those 5 names as of today were retired slaves. Everyone cheered with this great news that their master gave them. While they were celebrating, Mince got on one knee and stated that she would continue to devote herself as his humble servant. Roast came and jokingly said that she would be happy to receive a raise anytime as she was also staying in the clan. Mince and Roast started to fight while Vongo and Pickles came and informed him that they were also not thinking of retiring anytime soon. Sawadi was indeed shocked by them. He went home and talked to Lola about what happened that day. Lola mentioned that there was never a dull moment around him like the retired slaves or the eternal magic crystal thing. Eternal magic crystal was an artificial beast shaped like a magical crystal. He sought magic crystals so much that he mistakenly created one. Unlike a typical crystal, which depletes after a single usage, this crystal absorbs magicules and may be utilized several times. When compared to the output of a typical crystal, this one had roughly 1/100th of the output, but the application undoubtedly improved the quality of life of the general population. He didn't want to show the world this impactful crystal, but his first try at hiding it failed, as Lola immediately noticed something was in his pocket. She said that if it makes consumables last forever, they might receive less research funding from the country, so she suggested he discuss this with Professor Marino. She then wondered if it had a limit, like after using the crystal a few times, it would no longer be usable. Sawadi said that they could detune the crystal, making it have a lifespan. He thanked her for this great suggestion, but Lola seemed to notice that he still had something that he was hiding from her. She said that even before she had always felt something was off about him, but what happened today pretty much confirmed it. The way he treats his slaves, his otherworldly level of creativity, and the aura he has were suspicious to her. She said that he had the aura of a dead person just like her, and asked if he was a person who had escaped death once before. Sawadi seemed like he found this question funny, but his eyes were already tearing up and he couldn't hold it back while saying that it was impossible. Even he wasn't aware that he was crying. Lola smiled and informed him that only dead people know what people know, and asked him where he died and how he came back. He had been locking this secret deep inside his chest, but he really wanted to tell her the truth for so long. He was sure that she was the one and he wanted her to know, and he wanted her to accept and understand him. When he was about to tell, he was himself saying that even if he told her, she wouldn't believe him and no one cared. So he should make up a story and lie to her like he always does. He said that he now had money, honor, and popularity, unlike the previous life he had. But Lola held his hands and promised to accept anything he was going to say. Her words and the things she whispered to his ears broke Sawadi's lock and the truth poured out of his mouth. Lola, with a big smile, embraced him and he cried his eyes out like a little baby in her arms through the whole night. The next day, Pickles tells Jillian that she didn't know she borrowed a lot of the clan equipment. She thought she would have more of her equipment. She said Chicken had gone to the trouble of picking those for them. She said she just trusted her that much. Then she showed a sword that she bought herself, which was so easy to use. Jillian said it looked so expensive and asked how much it was. Then Pickles said there was a great bow she got from adventurer Keenson, but he was retired now. Pickles said she even used that bow to hunt a bird wyvern that morning. She said it made the hunt easier. However, Jillian told her that it wasn't because of the bow, it was her attack power. Pickles showed another tool that was made by Master Maid. One of them was a spear thrower and the other one was a slingshot. She told Jillian that these were also her keepsakes. Besides, Pickles said, she showed the dagger she got from her master during the MSG executive inauguration. Jillian said that must have been her most treasured keepsake. Pickles said it wasn't her most treasured keepsake, but her pride and joy. Then Jillian said that would be the end of her equipment audit and thanked her for her cooperation. Jillian went out to eat something, and while she was eating, a girl brought her a drink and wanted her to warm herself with that. It was the torkavayaki that her stall sells. Jillian said the drink was so good, but the girl wanted her to show it more on her face or something because she thought she disliked it. The girl asked her if working in management was really that tiring. Jillian said she had already done all of her tasks for today, but she still had tons waiting for tomorrow and it never ended. She said right now the master wanted to make a brewery, so she had been trying to look for a property for the brewery, but she hadn't found anything yet. Jillian said to no one's surprise, Sawadi had bought most of the properties, and thanks to that, the market price of the plot of land also increased. They got more people moving in there too. Jillian asked her if she knew any good, big, and cheap places far away from the main streets. She said she didn't know a place but suggested she ask Miss Chicken. Jillian said she would rather die than do that. The girl said she respected her too much, but she was just on another level. She was sure she was not even a human. Jillian said that sounded like an insult. The girl said she meant no human would be able to do what she had done. Jillian said she felt more suitable for a front office job than this. The girl said someone like her wouldn't do that because she was not socially slow at work and a coward. She continued that she was the airhead who always made mistakes and got scolded by everyone after all. Then the girl was called by her boss, who yelled at her to get back to work and stop slacking. Then she was about to get back to work, but she remembered a place. The girl said it was a place that may have been what she was looking for and suggested she give it a look. She said there was a plot of land where a small, cheap inn once was until it was burned to the ground and no one had bought or rented the land. When Jillian arrived there, she could not be sure if she was in the right place. She thought if the girl was trying to trick her, she was planning to beat her. However, the size and the location seemed to be all right. Then she saw an old man turned away. He must have been the one who managed the place. He was a stubborn old man, as the girl said. The girl heard that he turned everyone away at the gate. Jillian approached him and introduced herself, but he didn't turn to Jillian. When Jillian looked at his face, the old man didn't seem to be healthy. She thought it was her fault and she didn't know what to do or where to find a doctor. Jillian ran away to find help and found someone and asked them to help. She brought the old man to the hospital. Then she called Sawadi and he was also there. He said he heard about what happened and the old man was all right now. Sawadi told her that wasn't her fault, it was just his chronic disease just got worse suddenly. He said she just happened to be there, and now they could also negotiate the land price much more easily. Jillian asked her master Sawadi if she would get sold in tears, but he said there was no way he would sell her away over a trivial matter like that. She was so grateful and happy to hear that. Miss Chicken showed up and asked Sawadi what he did to her, but he said he didn't do anything. Then she took Jillian, gave her a cup of tea, and asked her if she had calmed herself down. She said she did and then thanked her. Jillian asked Chicken why she was being placed in management. Chicken said other people were far better than her who always made mistakes and always got scolded, and she said she felt like she would get sold away any time. Those were the same words that Jillian said. Jillian asked her how she knew that. She continued to say the sentences that Jillian said to the girl who brought her a drink. Chicken said she knew that feeling very well because she also used to feel the same way. She said she thought that she could not do her job right. She didn't have confidence in herself, and she feared that she would be sold anytime soon. Whenever she looked at people around her, they looked like they were enjoying their work while she felt like she didn't belong there. She said she was envious of them. However, Chicken said, she didn't understand everyone was just doing their best to protect the place where they had finally belonged. Chicken said she was busy every day, and her workload was also steadily increasing. She didn't have time to think about that. And just when she started to forget it, she remembered her master Sawadi's trust in her. She said then she understood that it was her place where she belonged. Chicken told Jillian it was how her story went, and told her if she didn't feel like her current job, not be afraid to voice it. Chicken said she would give her a different job, but in any case, she would never get sold away over a matter like they had today. Jillian said the master also told them the same thing before and told her that it felt like both of them shared the same mind. Chicken said she didn't know if she should have been happy to hear that. Jillian was surprised and asked her why. Chicken said he had made numerous inventions that have invigorated that city's economy, and he was a prominent figure all around. Jillian asked her if it was the first impression she got when she only looked at him from the outside. Chicken told her that she would understand it eventually. Chicken focused on the word trust. She said if he trusted them, then he would have shown them his real face much sooner. She said it felt like there was something massive and transparent that they didn't know separating them from him. She said if only she had stepped across it, if only she had been bold enough to reach him with her hand, but they were his slaves and he was their master. It was their bond that shackled them. Chicken said the only thing that they could do was to wait for the day when he finally showed them his real face. That one morning when he finally showed them his real face, the face of a person who had removed his walls, a person who had finally come to their side. Jillian asked her how should have put it. Chicken guessed Sawadi was problematic. Then Chicken looked at the watch, then she remembered she needed to go somewhere and told Jilin to go home and rest well because of the work she was going to give her tomorrow. Jilin thought the words that Chicken said, "He is problematic." The troubled smile that Chicken had when she said that was similar to what Pickles had at once when she said it was the same as that time. She thought their smile looked so genuine but with a hint of loneliness in it. Her present self wouldn't understand what their expression meant, just like how she was still not sure whether that job fitted her or not. However, right now, she thought she wished for the day when she could finally say she belonged in that place. Tomorrow was going to be a busy day again for her. Several days later, Sawadi said they would have an alcohol tasting party but not to celebrate the land purchase, and all of the executives would be there too. Then he asked Jilin if she wanted to join them. She thought it was her time to shine, so she said she was honored to be invited. Then she went to the party and she was late. She said she tried to make booze using magic engineering. It seemed like she made it too strong since she already made a lot. Sawadi asked her what about just one sip. Then she saw Chicken laying on the ground saying she still had work to do. Later on, Sawadi and his fiancée Lola are trying to make final arrangements for their wedding. They were trying to make everything perfect, from the drinks to the guest list. Lola drank something and she said it was called Lola Rola because that booze suited her palate. She said she liked it even more because it was Sawadi who made it. Then asked him if he was going to sell that because he had spent time and effort making it. Sawadi thought they were already at maximum capacity just for the venue and the wedding souvenir. There was actually a way to make high-proof liquor much easier, but they would use that method when the brewery was ready. He said that they could use the product not only as a beverage, but as a disinfectant, a fuel, and many more. Sawadi asked Lola if she knew the meaning of misconstrue. She said she knew and then asked him if there was something wrong. He said they had more guests than they planned. He would become a member of the nobility and he didn't want to call their names wrong. Then they both looked at the list. The names on the page were soldiers Sawadi had treated. She asked if he remembered them. He said their names looked familiar. Lola stuck on a name and told Sawadi that there was just a name that took her back. It got her a bit. It was the name of a rival who was a valorous airwoman. She said she was sure they made a promise to invite each other to their wedding. She said when she was going to meet her at the wedding, she was going to surprise her with her magic. Sawadi asked her not to make any ruckus. Sawadi asked in the end if none of her family members were coming to their wedding. She said his older brother was serving in the army while her parents lived in a territory at the border. Sawadi asked what the border was. She said unlike that place, it was colder over there. It was also close to the sea. She said they would go fishing the whole year around and eat fish every day. She said she didn't resent her family. She said she meant no one wanted to see their daughter or younger sister become older than themselves. However, Lola asked as a family, as Sawadi's own family, if they would always be supportive of him. She said they had a lot of responsibility and things to keep, so what anyone thought was right might not apply to others. Sawadi got what Lola meant because he also did the same thing as them. He told Lola that he hoped they could be a happy family. She said they would. Sawadi told her that he wanted to have 5 children and told her to do their best with a big smile on his face. The wedding day came and everything seemed perfect, but they both looked so nervous. Lola said she didn't expect a representative from the marshal to come and her stomach hurt. Sawadi asked what happened to her advanced healing magic, but as she said it could not cure stress. He told Lola that she would be just fine. Then they walked to the wedding ceremony hall. Everyone was applauding them and whistling. Before the wedding ceremony started, a few words from retired General Rasp represented Marshal Centurion. He said first of all he wanted to thank them for having him on that happy day. He said he didn't think he needed to introduce the bride, retired Major Lola Sulela, the light beam to anyone there that day. However, General Rasp said he was sure some of them didn't know who the groom, Sir Sawadi Sulela, was. He said he had become an indispensable figure in the military. Sawadi was the inventor of the modular-type artificial beasts, the one who invented the core technology of the transcontinental railroad system. He said he was a researcher with many achievements, but to protect his life on top of still being a student, none of that was made public. However, he said that it was only natural for that country to reward such a prolific researcher, and there was no better day to address that than that very happy day. Therefore, he said, Sawadi would be awarded the Great Eagle Medal with swords as well as the 3 diamond medals. Then he ordered Sawadi to move forward. Sawadi went to take his medals and told them they should have told him that things were going to happen. However, the marshal loved to surprise people. Marshal told Sawadi he had officially become a member of the aristocrats. He said that place might have been just a rural place, but having Sawadi as an assistant professor at the Magic Academy, that town's prestige had slightly increased. Miss Goskin and Mrs. Goskin were at the wedding and they congratulated Sawadi's wedding. Sawadi asked him how his health was. Miss Goskin said he had never been better, he was healthier than he was before. He asked if Sawadi made that tasty liquor. Sawadi said he did it and called it Lola Rola. Miss Goskin told him that he really loved his wife and told him that he wished he could be like him. He said getting married and receiving medals on the same day was a feat. The woman, a rival who was a valorous airwoman Lola had told Sawadi about earlier, had arrived. Her name was Ava. Saw Lola and greeted her. She said nothing had changed because she was the same annoying woman as ever. Ava said she thought Lola would be in a slump after losing her magic organ. Lola apologized for disappointing her. Ava asked Lola when she was going to return to the army. Ava said the match between them was still a blur. However, she said she wouldn't come back. Ava was disappointed and thought she heard it wrong. Lola repeated what she said, and Sawadi told her that his wife would never return to the battlefield and he would protect her. Sawadi asked Lola no matter what happened to the country, never return to the battlefield. She said if that was what he wanted, she was going to do her best to fulfill that. Asked if he was going to protect her because he had never killed a person yet. However, he said he was going to protect her with her inventions and healing magic. Asked if he was going to protect that a demon from herself using his kid toys and his child play spells. She told them to stop messing with her. All the soldiers that Sawadi healed stood in front of Aha and said that they would not let her lift a finger against Sawadi and his wife at any cost. Said she saw everyone who lost their magic organ in that place. Losers who ran away from the battlefield with their tail between their legs. Aha was about to cause a scene, but the marshal ordered them to be silent. He said it was the day for a celebration, so told them to behave themselves. Then they all turned back to the wedding ceremony. Lastly, the kiss from the new husband and wife would be the end of the day's ceremony. Sawadi promised Lola that he wouldn't let her down. He would protect her with all of his life. Then he kissed the bride. Since that day, Sawadi had decided he was going to protect that smile and happiness of the love of his life and the important people around him whom he had met in his second life. He said he would live to his fullest in another world. Lola and Sawadi, who were officially married, started their newlywed life by Sawadi moving to her house. He was greeted by lots of maids who were ready to serve him. Even though he had visited her house several times, he was still amazed by the luxury of the upper class. Now that they were married, he felt nervous. In the next scene, he was telling Chicken about the time when he opened their closet. All he saw were shorts and there were loads of them. Now that he was married, having a house of their own sounded like a good idea, but they took a 2-year loan to buy that huge land for the theater. And he also needed to get used to this noble lifestyle as a commoner. Chicken didn't think he should force himself to live together, and if he felt unsatisfied about it, he should talk to Lola and commute to the house or live in a separate room from her. Sawadi thought about that too because he still had to stay up to finish his research. But the truth was, Lola hated that idea. She thinks that if they weren't together, she didn't want marriage. He found this pretty cute, so didn't insist on her. Chicken asked the main reason why he was there and wanted him to help them if he was free. But he just wanted to brag and didn't want to work, so she yelled at him to go home. Roast came and asked Chicken to handle the bills for her. Chicken looked at the bills and told Roast that they couldn't pass them through, but it seemed like Roast having difficulties, so she begged her. Sawadi had something to earn her some pocket money. He then showed them the new species of artificial beasts that he made. However, they didn't seem to be excited about this. He told them to choose what color of the egg they liked, then put the magic crystal into the bottom of the egg. When they did, the eggs cracked and 3 cute beasts were born. He wanted them to raise and observe them. The truth was, when he went to his parents' house, he was the bicorn he made as a trial had seemed to develop consciousness. No one had researched consciousness in artificial beasts before, so he wanted to research samples if possible, which was why he made them cuter. They could feed them with magic crystals through their mouth and also train and name them. He also mentioned that they were also taking care of a small flying dragon named Torf. He needed them to fill in a handwritten report every week. They now realized why he wanted them to have the beasts, because they were the only ones who could read and write among the retired slaves. For now, they were researching artificial beast consciousness, but they might sell this in the future, so he hoped for their cooperation. They all seemed okay with this duty. The menu for today's lunch was pan-seared lamb chops with garlic sauce, and the soup was tomato-based. They ate their meal in silence, and when Sawadi let himself on the couch, Lola mentioned how he didn't seem to be enjoying the lunch today. He explained that the food was delicious, but the summer heat was affecting him a lot. Eating hot food on a hot summer day was too much for him. She wondered what was summer like back in his home, but rather than back home, it was different back in his previous world. She asked what he had during summer over there, and he said that something sold and refreshing, foods that quench the throat like summon, or hayamugi. He then wondered if he could do it. Lola suggested to go and try making it. They hopped on the horse and went to get the ingredients, but he was having a little motion sickness from riding the horse. He said that he was going to make that food in HQ, which was why he came home since all the best ingredients in town were here. The servant wondered where his wife was, and he said that she was spending time with father as she rarely visits him. He gathered the ingredients and asked if they had soy sauce and bonito flakes. But the servant had never heard something like that before. He then informed Sawadi that the dead log mushroom was a high-class ingredient, but they couldn't get enough in stock. Not only that, it grows around mountains and also gets monopolized by the Eastern merchants. Sawadi considered cultivating that, which made him shocked. The servant then grinned and wanted him to let them know when he made it because they would buy them in large quantities. But it was clear that he was making fun of him for considering something like that. Lola came and they went to the kitchen, with the ingredients and the usual members gathering there. Sawadi stated that he was going to make food that was enjoyable, cool, and refreshing to eat during summer. The meal he was going to do was somen. He told Hunt to take care of the noodles and make sure to knead the dough well. Sela was going to boil 2 pots of water and put dried sardine in one pot and dried seaweed in the other. Lola was going to write down the recipe. Sawadi started making the dipping sauce. He made 4 different dipping sauces with different ratios of soup stock, white wine, sugar, and fish sauce. When he tasted it, none of them were even close except the one with more soup stock. But Lola and Hunt seemed to like the one with more fish sauce as it had a clear and distinct flavor. They then started to boil the noodles. After a specific time, he told her to take out the noodles and chill them in iced water, then spread ice cubes using magic in a bowl. Once they put the noodles on top of the ice cubes, it was done. He tasted the noodle, and from the coolness to the texture and chewiness, it was a simple yet nostalgic taste. And that was udon without a doubt. He didn't expect noodles made using a pasta machine would be this thick. The girls seemed to love the taste and how refreshing it was. The other slaves were also curious to know what they were eating. When they left there, Lola told Sawadi to not feel bad about it because as long as no one else did that, she didn't see the problem. But Sawadi felt bad about being careless. There was no proper air conditioner or fridge in this world, and the usage of ice to cool stuff wasn't that common. But Lola was sure it would surely get popular after the food stalls started to sell somen. As she kept calling it somen, Sawadi got even more frustrated and stated that that wasn't somen, it was udon, and he needed to go back to the HQ for a bit. At the theater construction site, Lola can't even defend him on how ridiculous this thing had become. He started cultivating shiitake mushroom, a high-class ingredient, around the corner of the theater construction site after getting provoked by that head clerk. And just like the alcohol production, he just added an enchantment spell onto the shiitake mushrooms and managed to cultivate A+ grade mushrooms. The girls were sure they would crash the market with that amount. They started harvesting the mushrooms and put them into a carriage. The weather was so hot as always. Sawadi then had an idea and shared it with Lola. He suggested to go to a swimming pool. A pool party was the first thing that someone could think of as a rich summer vacation. In case you wondered if there was a swimming pool in this world, the one where they were right now was a privately owned pool. There was no one, so they made them themselves. A few days ago, Lola visited Sawadi while he was working. She wondered how much force that thing she was holding withstand. Sawadi was sure it could put up against giant beasts based on the underground tunnel structure. That sounded amazing. She wondered how he came up with this thing, since mages rarely delve into civil engineering. He explained that it was from his previous world because he didn't want to tell her about the tunnel there. Owning that magic crystal factory was surely super risky. She asked how the construction going, and he said that they needed to check if there were any weak spots, check the drainage, and then clean the place, and everything should be done by today. The lunch arrived and they started to eat. While they were eating, Sheena, the girl who was in their wedding music band, came and she was now working at a food stall. Lupika mentioned that she just gotten married and was expecting a baby to embarrass her. They congratulated her and Sawadi gave her a gold coin as she would need to cover many things. Lola spilled her drink. There was a few seconds of dead silence between everyone, and eventually Sheena started to beg him to have mercy on her and promised to be his slave again after giving birth to this child. Sawadi was so confused, so Lola explained that she thought he wanted to buy her baby in her belly. He said that he didn't want to do any of those and was just giving them as a present. After making everything clear, Sheena left and Sawadi called Lupika to ask what happened to the children of the slaves. She said that it depends on their master's policy. For Sawadi, the children of his slaves weren't slaves and he would coordinate this with Chicken too. Lupika promised to pass this information along to everyone as much as she could. He thought about how clueless he was about this world's customs or conventions, even though he had been living in this world for more than 10 years. They got back to work and by the end of the day, the pool was ready. He apologized to Lola for having her help him until this late, but Lola loved doing exercise and also filling this amount of water was difficult. He decided to jump in without waiting and Lola joined him too. She scared him for a second while they were under the water. Lola felt good but wished to have this in the afternoon when the weather was so hot. But she had to admit that it was romantic with the stars and the moon in the sky. But Sawadi said that she was the one who was so beautiful tonight. He then started to tease her, but he was 10 years younger to tease her like that. Summertime pool was really the springtime of life. The next day when he went to Chicken to discuss about making swimsuits that didn't exist in this world, she was extremely enthusiastic about it, so he explained it all and let her take it from there. After all, his hands were already full of researching and developing. On the weekend, Lola and Sawadi reserved the pool to themselves to enjoy. And also it was the day when the pool water got replaced. During weekdays, he opened the pool to all of his slaves to use as a wellness resort. At the MSG, Sawada explained to Chicken that he tried to sell the instant fried noodles wholesale to the military people, and their response had been somewhat underwhelming from what he could tell. They had developed it for 3 years, so he wanted to at least make a profit from it. Chicken suggested selling it to the caravans or the street peddler unions. It didn't eat much space and had a long shelf life, which was something that those merchants highly valued. Sawadi agreed with her, and she said that she would pass it to the person responsible for that. She then mentioned that every morning their customers come to buy it from their food store, and their manual labor slaves have it as a snack. Also, Mince buys it in big quantities, and she heard she experiments with different seasonings. She seemed to keep this side of hers hidden, but that woman likes trying new food and always tries new menus at the cafe next door. That side of hers was the opposite of her appearance. And about the pool, she informed him that it was really popular and everyone loved to use it, but she had a slight concern. She heard that a few girls had drowned, but fortunately, everyone was safe. Also, when his second brother's group borrowed the pool, he drowned, but that wasn't Sawadi's concern. The place was far from the sea, so no one could swim there unless they were fishermen or a soldier. They must find a solution to that problem, but he can't just go to the pool to monitor the situation, because if Lola finds out he was going to the pool full of women, she would turn into a demon. After brainstorming for a while, he had an idea. In the pool, Sawadi was at the food stand wearing a wig and talking in a feminine voice. He was proud of his idea and was thinking about how genius he was while serving the girls beers. He was monitoring the girls without them noticing. But unlike what he thinks, some of the girls already noticed that he was their master. Hay asked Roast, but she said that she didn't know that, but it was obvious that he didn't want to be found out. She told them to tell everyone to just pretend to not know that it was him. She figured that Sawadi had heard about the drowning incident and came here to monitor the situation. After a while, Sawadi and Lola were at the pool, and Sawadi quoted a Japanese poem for Lola. She asked if there was no activity that they could do during this time. They started to think about it, and fishing was the one that came to both of their mind. Geha geha is a huge freshwater fish found in the kingdom of Crownia. This white fish has solid meat and a distinct murky taste. It is one of the few edible fish that can be found in this deep inland area between Luevuma, Tolks, and Torquiva. However, their habitat is also home to many hazardous beasts. Because of the significant mortality risks, only a few people attempted to catch this fish, resulting in a fish-eating culture that is hardly established in this region. As a result, despite its unpleasant flavor, some people considered geha geha sold in markets to be a luxury dish. Probably because he was from Japan, Sawadi had this irresistible craving for delicious fish dishes that drove him to start a fish farm to breed the fish as well as remove the mud taste. He didn't know the reason, but the result was beyond his expectation like usual. Since they produced more than what they could consume, they started to sell the farmed fish, and before he realized it, he ended up starting a fish farming business. Soon after, the price of the fish dropped, and restaurants and common households started to serve this fish. Using those farmed fish and an empty pool as a fishing pond, he did a trial on the fish pond with some help from his fish farming staff. However, they seemed to be struggling with fishing. Their arms started to hurt after a while because of holding the rod. Fortunately, after many failed tries, they managed to catch one fish. The girls let themselves lay on the floor as they were relieved. Sawadi hesitantly asked how their first time fishing was, and they simply answered by saying that they were about to die. He wondered if the fishing was that intense over there, and apparently it was never an intense sport like this. He hoped that people would find this intensity enjoyable, but before that, he needed to prepare sturdier fishing rods. They cooked the fish the girls caught, and Sawadi was delighted by the taste. Lola agreed, saying that nothing could beat the taste of the fish that you fished yourself. She remembered that she used to go fishing with her brother using their father's boat. Sawadi wondered if she wanted to go back. She joined the army when she was 15 and had never returned home since then. Besides her father and brother, whom she still met in the army, she couldn't even remember her mother's face. But when the time was right, she would like to go back together with Sawadi and show him around her hometown. She asked the same question to Sawadi, and it would be a lie to say he had never thought about that. But over there, he was forced to work to the bone, and his memories of that place were just bitter and painful. He always considered his life hopeless, but then realized that it was because of his weak personality and timidness, and even when he can't remember, he was sure there should be good memories. Ever since he met Lola, he started to think about his past life like that. So even if he could go back, he would still be in this world because Lola wasn't in that world. Lola was speechless at first, but then smiled and agreed with him. They held hands in the moonlight. In the next scene, Gramps explains to Sawadi that now that he is a nobleman, it would be shameful if the next Thanksgiving festival could not be bigger and merrier than the previous ones. Sawadi immediately went to Chicken to tell her that Gramps tricked him into getting him to make the festival at Schenker Street. But since Gramps was the one who took care of them for a long time, there was no way he could have said no to him. Also, he didn't think they could say no because they had been using the street in front of their office as their own street. He also tried to defend himself by saying that they were the ones who got so excited when the street was renamed Schenker Street. Chicken eventually accepted and said that the retired slaves would help them too since they had been wanting to do so. She mentioned that he could have just given them orders as they couldn't disobey him. She then wondered what the festival would be like and if he decided what it would be. Sawadi grinned and only stated that she could trust him with that. After gathering everyone, Sawadi started his speech and started to divide the group work. Their deadline was short, but with their track records, he only had high hopes for them all. At the Magic Academy, Sawadi was sure he was doomed. Lola came and asked if something was stressing him out. She wondered if it was about the eternal magic crystal, but he had nothing to worry about. He was actually worried about the songs for the festival and the song for the retired major. Lola suggested letting his band compose those songs for him, but they had been busy. It was a band for the sake of his wedding ceremony, but because of their performance, the new songs they played, and the novelty of such a music band, they became popular, and from that point, people were borrowing them to perform at their wedding ceremonies or party events. Ultimately, they became super busy with composing or performing requests coming from the big nobles. He didn't think they could make it if he asked the available members now. Lola suggested buying more slaves, but he thought she was suggesting buying disabled slaves who had musical talent. But she actually meant that he could simply buy healthy, normal musician slaves. He thanked her for this idea and decided to go buy now. In the next scene, he gathered some slaves and healed them. He wanted them to do their best and put their musical skill to good use. He needed them to make songs for the festival that they urgently needed and also a song for a big noble. However, while he was talking about the deadline and other stuff, they didn't seem to listen to him and were talking to each other. Suddenly, one of the slaves named Moimo started to scold everyone for being disrespectful to their master and told them to listen to what he was saying. The healthy body that they had, the house that protected them from the weather, and the clothes and shoes they were wearing were all from their master, and they dared to ignore him, a person who was like a god to them. She seemed like she was going overboard, so Sawadi stopped her. Sawadi said to the other slaves that they could just ask Moimo if they had any questions and go to his place. Matmo was an all-rounder. Deep down, he was just an earnest girl. This time around, he went to gather healthy musician slaves, but almost all of the slaves were disabled. The slave merchant said that Sawadi became a legend within the slave merchant world, and people from all walks of life gathered to be bought by him. He decided to buy anyone regardless of their gender or age whenever he needed more manpower in a certain area, but was concerned that something like what they just had happened. Up until now, he let Chicken and her team take care of the new slave orientation. He thought about making an easy-to-understand employee handbook. As the fall wind dissipated such worries away from his mind, the festival preparation was coming along nicely. Everyone worked with passion, and finally, the Thanksgiving festival day arrived. As the festival continued, the people were all having fun. Lola tasted the pork egg okonomiyaki with sauce that she had been waiting for. She was amazed by the taste of it. They also had donuts, meat bun, spaghetti, udon, yakisoba, and many others to have that festival spirit. He made the takoyaki from grilled smoked meat as they can't get any octopus around this area. Lola said that most of the food he had created was based on flour, and this was because this region was a wheat producer. Also, his family was currently trading wheat as their main business so they could get them in bulk for cheap. They went to check on Vongo and the other slaves who had the duty to make the festival more secure. She caught the pickpockets. Sawadi patted her head proudly. While Lola was watching Sawadi, a woman bumped into her and fell. She apologized and helped her to get up. The woman was fine. Apparently, she heard that there had been out-of-ordinary theatrical shows around this region, so she asked if she knew the place. Lola suggested she follow this street and she would find a tent next to a giant building. Before the woman left, she handed her cigarette to her and stated that if she passed it to the receptionist, she could get the best seat. When she left, Sawadi and Vongo approached Lola because they were suspicious. Lola didn't care about them and asked what show MSG Theater had for this time around, and he said that they were showing a villainous story. It was a story about an ordinary girl who gets reincarnated as a villainess and the various things that she did to escape the bad ending. As the story progresses, she helps people around her, and before she knows it, she is adored by many people. In the end, the main character does get into a tight corner, but everyone around her helps her back, so the story ends with a happy ending. They went to the place where the Lantern Festival dance was about to be performed. Since ancient times, this festival had been the event to express their gratitude to the moon goddesses, and everyone could join in together with the dancers. The music started and people were dancing. Sawadi noticed that people in this world were also using events and festivals as their special meeting locations. Lola suggested enjoying the festival with Sawadi too, and they started dancing. And with that, the Thanksgiving festival at Sheker Street continued until late at night. Sometime later, at the MSG's Adventurer Group's home base, Slaves were practicing. Roast and Sawadi were also there, but he was having a hard time understanding why she made him watch this short martial arts performance. Roast said that it was because he rarely came to this place, so they just wanted to show him the results of their daily practice. He actually came here because of the newly recruited musician slaves. Since he got really busy, he completely forgot about that, but they kept submitting the music sheets every single day, so it started to build up on his table. As they became more and more fervent about the job, they started to follow him everywhere, asking him to confirm their work. The adventurers and the security guards were unable to overlook this problem, so they caught the musicians and sent them to take the new employee training. Roast informed him that everyone knew that they should be following the training. Sawadi knew that it was his fault that he rarely came to visit the adventurers here. He knew that the adventurer group had been working their best and had given their all for MSG. He didn't want to sound like he didn't care about them, but he really wanted to go home now. Roast was shocked at first, but then started to burst into laughter. She seemed relieved that he was still the same old young master she had. She said that they were doing this not for the recognition nor cause it was their duty, although there may be one or two people who do think that way. All of them here were born or raised as a worthless person. Nothing they could rely on except their own strength, and with that they lived their life acting all strong and tough like no tomorrow. But one day they all lost the only thing they could rely on in an instant, and that was when they realized that they were nothing without their strength. From that on, their fate was sealed. They became a lure for monsters, a guinea pig for magic experiments, or a collection for some collectors. They were born as a worthless person, and they would die as one too. But in this town he brought them in, healed them, and gave them a place to go home and have them things they wanted to protect. He gave them a place where they belonged. She reminded him again that as adventurers they loved him and were grateful to him. But they weren't smart like Chicken or could be gentle like Pickles and Vongo. So the only way to express their gratitude to him was this. Sawadi was super embarrassed and felt emotional but tried to hide it. After Roast's speech, he thought of a few things that he should have done for them. The next day he went to Chicken and expressed his plans. She gladly accepted his request. She stated that they would use the planned theater building land, and if they were going to make the seats for the viewers as well, they would need 3 weeks to finish all. One of the new slaves came and asked him if he could elaborate more about the matching outfits. She was Isuka, the new management trainee and the supervisor of this event. He said that they needed clothes that were comfy to move around in, and clothes this wide, in 2 colors for the headbands. Isuka used to work at a flower market, and despite her big and bulky body, her personality was soft and timid. Chicken said that there was no need to rush things now, and she seemed to trust Isuka, but she still wanted her to be bolder. Sawadi trusted this girl because she was so easy to read. After a while, the preparation was completed, and the first ever MSG competition, the sports festival, was about to start. It was announced that before the sports festival began, the representative from each team was going to take the athlete's oath. Roast and Mince started to scream the words while looking at each other confidently as if they were opponents. The speaker noticed things got heated up all of a sudden. The speaker was Yasmo, and next to her, Sawadi was sitting. She asked Sawadi if there was anything he would like to highlight, but he just made a joke and Yasmo continued to speak. The first match of the day was the sprinting race. The winner of the race was Kakla from the Postal Service. Sawadi stated that she was truly an Idaten. It was an epithet they used to call someone who could run fast. The next one was the 3-legged race. The first MSG Sports Festival was an event mainly for adventurers with some participation from others, such as the guards or the post women. It was a place to give them a chance to flex their talent. This was Sawadi's way of giving back to the adventurers that he came up with from the chat he had with Roast. Since it would be more exciting to have other people outside MSG to watch it, he made the event public to the townsfolk. Also, he made use of the event to make money by selling snacks and drinks at the venue. There were so many different events like running on top of their teammates' backs and beanbag toss game, that they put beanbags of their team color into the basket on top of the pole. They had a short break, and in the meantime, the performance from their cheerleaders started. And then lastly, Vongo and her team made a beautiful airshow. Sawadi didn't expect it to be such a mess like this, so he started to consider doing more practice runs for the next year. Suddenly, one of the slaves came and wanted his help. When she took him to a room, it was full of injured people. Not only the competitors, but some people also overeat or overdrink too, so they can't handle everyone. Sawadi treated the players together first, so he told them to group them based on their injuries. After a while, the break ended and the second half started. The white team had narrowly won the first half. The name of the first game was Sticks Collecting. The team who could capture more sticks on the ground back to their base would be the winner of the game. Also, both Chicken and Jilin joined each team as their strategy advisor. Sawadi came back from treating everyone and encountered a war scene. Literally no one was captured after the sticks, and they were having an illegal big brawl. Sawadi started to tell them to start collecting the sticks, but they weren't even listening. He then called for Chikin and Jilin in a strict voice, making the two nervous. He ordered them to go and solve this. They both started to collect the sticks to end the game, and in the end, the white team won. But the match for the OP adventurer was going to be decided at the last game. After that, he heard that the game was progressing normally. He heard that because he was dealing with the patients at the infirmary. One of the slaves came and called for him because apparently they were forcing Asuka to join their team. For the last game, even with Pickles and Vongo joining in, they still lacked one more player, so they needed her to play, but she was refusing it. Sawadi tried to convince her by saying that it was the job of an event organizer to make sure their event made it until the very end, no matter how absurd the situation had become. He wanted her to look at them. Those girls weren't the smartest. They were short-tempered and didn't have high proficiency. Yet they always get their job done with great results because they give their best for the thing in their present. In his opinion, she was smart and thoughtful, but also lacked resolution. Since she always thinks about the consequences, she becomes afraid to take action. He told her that it was okay to be spontaneous and bold. With that, the player shortage problem was sorted, but it didn't make the situation any better than before. The game started and she already fell by herself. He could see her in him, and he didn't think one death was enough to change that. Even now, he is still timid and cowardly, so he ends up doing things that are plain and simple. That wasn't a bad thing, but it was hard to see and understand. He started to believe that maybe that was what he needed to survive. When he was about to go back to treating, the musicians came and they were all so buffed. They had refined their body and spirit through training and were calling themselves reborn musicians. And they also composed a song and wanted him to listen and dance to this muscle song together. But suddenly, before everyone knew it, the headbands of all players had been taken. Everyone was confused and they noticed that Pickles was holding something. They thought it was a weapon, but it was actually Vongo. The duo of Pickles and Vongo had taken all of the headbands, and from their face, it was clear that they were saying they were the strongest. The clear autumn sky, the never-ending cheering, the gush of sweat, the gales of laughter, and the swarm of pecks. As his consciousness faded away, deep in his heart he believed that to survive it was important to set rules as rigid as Flex's pecs, and was understood by everyone. The next chapter starts with a girl named Apika recalling the moment she was being sold as a slave. In the carriage, she was with 7 other slaves and they were heading somewhere. At night, the carriage stopped and the man called her to handle the dinner. While everyone was eating, she helped the sick ones to eat. She told them to not worry and soon everyone would be saved. Everyone looked at him strangely. A little girl grabbed her shirt and she thought she wanted more, but she refused. She figured that 3 people were coming there. She then handed the empty plates to the man and informed him that 3 dangerous beings were coming from the west. He said that it must be beasts, and he would tell the adventurers. They were going to leave early tomorrow, so he told them to sleep. In the morning they were trying to move, but they couldn't even see anything, so the man asked her to tell him the direction. She stayed by him to tell him the direction. He apologized for making him take care of others and showing direction. He was lucky that Apika and that little girl were blessed. She never thought her ability to know the direction would be useful after becoming a slave. Also, being busy distracted her from remembering that moment, as she said. Apparently, Apika only had 6 months to live as she had a terminal disease. One day she got sick and kept getting worse, so they went to a doctor to do a checkup. It was when she learned that she only had 6 months left. She doesn't remember anything after that because of how shocked she was by the news. When she came to her senses, she was already a slave. She came from a poor family. They barely had enough to visit a doctor. They couldn't buy any expensive medicine, and the prospect of her getting cured was zero. Facing this, her parents might have thought about that. She also mentioned that well-known story. The story is about an amazing mage who could cure any diseases and injuries that had spread to places like even her village. Since slave merchant convoy bound for Torquiva passes only once every year, everything was quite aligned for them to sell her. The day before they got her, they understood that Shorty. He didn't know if that was her parents, but the moment he received his money, he left immediately and didn't even look at her face once. Ever since he was abandoned by his parents, then his boss took him in, and he has been working on this. Even a man like him got a wife and kids back in his country. And what he saw made him think about what he was doing as a job. He said that if there ever came a day when she could finally accept what her parents had done to her, even if it was just one letter, she should send one to them. In the next scene, someone was talking about a bird killed in an instant by someone. He was the fire lizard of Lady Mintz, and he claimed to be stronger than that bird. He wanted to show Apika what he could do, but this wheat-producing area was just well protected. Suddenly, while they were talking, the little girl came and informed them that something was coming. They encountered a red-cheeked fox. The horses got spooked and they can't move now. The guardians tried to run away before they got killed by that fox, but the slaves were all inside the carriage. She told every slave that no matter what happens, they should never give up. She said that Torquiva wasn't that far away anymore, and she was sure they would all be saved. She didn't care what would happen to her, but at least she wanted those little girls to be saved. She then recalled the memory of the moment she was being sold. Her father told her that he knew what they were doing to her wasn't right and she could resent and despise them. But there was one thing her father needed her to do. He wanted her to live. After she remembered that, she heard that the strongest adventurers were here. She saw Vongo and Pickles beating the fox with ease and was speechless. Even now, she could still vividly remember that scene. The figure of that adventurer called the Seven Blades seen from behind was strong, noble, beautiful, and also far more majestic than anything she had ever seen. Compared to such an amazing journey she had been through, the part after she arrived at Torquiva was rather anticlimactic. Master Sawadi put a great number of sickly slaves together and bought them all at once. All of their injuries or illnesses were healed so quickly that they did not even have a chance to chat with him. Then they were given clothes, food, and a place to stay. The next day, they were immediately assigned a job. Thanks to her bird god's blessing, she was able to be entrusted with an important job. In Torquiva, things were changing so quickly. It was hectic every day, but she was in good health and enjoying her time here. She was writing down those thoughts she had and what happened to her. There was also one thing changing. She had a young sister named Rubika now. It was the girl who was with her in the same horse carriage. She was Rubika, a wolf beast woman. She lost a bit of her innocence, but she was her little sister. She informed her that everyone had left for the H already. They held hands and started to walk together. She was hoping that they could meet with them one day and back together as a family. And with that, her letter to her parents ended and she sent it to them. The next chapter begins with 3 mail carriers, Porto, Kakura, and Yoshina, eating to the point of nearly making themselves sick. They only seemed to realize at the last moment that udon was at the bottom of the hot pot. Porto was so stuffed that she didn't want to eat for the next 2 days, while Yoshina was already thinking about her next meal. Porto playfully teased her for being so food-obsessed before turning to Kakura to ask if she was feeling any better. The next day they went fishing, and even though it was a tough job for them, everyone managed to catch 1 fish. While working on the mushrooms, Kakura expressed her discomfort about not being praised more as a mail carrier. After all, she carries heavy packages every day, whether it's raining, snowing, hot, or cold. But people say she was just taking a walk as a job. Yoshina agreed with her. Porto added that people who can't even read or write should try doing it themselves instead of saying anyone could do that job. She said she even had the entire city map and where everyone lives memorized. While complaining about this topic, they noticed that Yoshina had agreed to this the whole time, even though she worked indoors. Yoshina winked at them as a response. They continued their topic while working. They talked about how the other departments wore cute outfits like adventurers and tea shops. Porto said it must be nice wearing those sparkling outfits. Yoshina didn't stop and teased Porto, saying that it wouldn't suit Porto. Yoshina was the only one who carried lots of fish, so she had to stop them to say that it was too much for her. They felt bad for her but didn't help and just told her to hang in there. She eventually managed to bring every ingredient to Seal. Seal was confused because there were too many ingredients and not a lot of them. She asked if 3 of them could finish this many. They said they could and reminded her that they had a reservation before the sports festivals. It was an all-you-can-eat buffet of high-quality ingredients, so Porto was confident in herself. Sealy gave them some tea while they waited and reminded them that it was fine if they left any food. They sat together and continued today's topic. The thing Porto was most uncomfortable about was people's cynicism. Delivering letters with sad news like obituaries was the hardest part of their job. Kakura, they can't see what was inside anyways, and it would be nice if they could just treat it as a job and move on. When they read the letter in front of them and start crying, or when they give them the cold shoulder, they start to feel like they had done something wrong or wonder if it would have been better not to deliver it at all. Suddenly, Yoshina noticed that Kakura had been smelling nice lately, and asked if she had found someone she liked. Kakura had a busted face and tried to object that it wasn't like that, but she was still suspicious. So Porto asked if she was hiding something, like a boyfriend. She reminded her of the promise they made about not hiding anything from each other. The thing that saved Kakura was the ready food being served. Seal prepared a special pot of withered 3-mushroom stew. They still had plenty of ingredients, so she told them to eat a lot. They were all delighted by the taste of the meal. As expected from high-quality ingredients, it was thick and juicy, and the smell was irresistible. The fish melted in their mouth and the umami was overflowing. While eating, Porto told Kakura that she still hadn't heard her answer. Kakura suggested waiting until they were done eating. She then started telling them what happened. One day, Kakura was tired of the sight of the streets and her same old delivery job. It was the same old routine as a mail carrier, but she was always happy to deliver Mrs. letters. Since she had lots of letters this time, she invited her in and served her some tea. Saya was one of the mail department's best customers. She corresponded with various people in the town and delivered a lot of letters every day. She said it was because they used to teach reading and writing in the past, but Kakura thought half of the letters were probably love letters. Before opening the letters, Saya brought some sweets she made that morning. When she gave the cookies to Kakura, she noticed her hands were dry, so she gave her a moisturizing cream she made herself and it smelled like roses. She told her that just because she was cute, she couldn't let her guard down. If she kept her skin smooth like this, Saya was sure she would find someone special in no time. As someone without a mother, the casual moment spent with Saya before collecting the letter became something special to her. Saya noticed that it was already late, so she started preparing to send the letters. While she was writing, Kakura noticed a knitted scarf, so she asked if she made that. Kakura assumed she made it for her grandchild, but she said she made one for that child last year. That one was for a special person who brought her happiness. When she finished her letter, Saya asked if she could tell her story. She believed that sometimes talking to someone could make her feel better. Kakura chuckled and asked if she was making that kind of face. But Saya said she didn't. She just felt like something was off. Kakura could have put on a fade, but the words just wouldn't stop. She talked about herself, about work, and so many things. She talked about everything inside her that had nowhere left to escape. She started to wonder if her work was helping someone, or if she was making a difference. To comfort her, Saya told her that ever since she started delivering letters to her every day, she realized that letters carry the feelings of the person who wrote them. While patting her head, she told her that her work was very important because it connected a lot of people and their feelings, whether it's happy or sad. Every letter is filled with cherished memories for every person who writes. She hugged her and comforted her that there was no way her work wasn't important, and she was sure everyone felt that way. She thanked her for delivering it because there was no such thing as a letter that didn't need to be delivered. She told the girls about this memory, and Porto wasn't surprised that Saya said those words. Kakura had been thinking about what she said about the importance of delivering letters, and realized that she said horrible things. Porto asked Kakura if she had ever received a letter, and she said she hadn't. Porto hasn't gotten any letters before too. She wondered what it would be like. Suddenly Yoshina remembered something and gave a letter addressed to Kakura. Kakura was shocked and so happy to finally receive her first letter. After that, they went home. Unlike the other day, they started to talk about their job positively. Kakura said they should take pride in any kind of work because the people watching them would always notice this. Porto was surprised that she was highly motivated. She couldn't believe it was coming from someone who was so down just recently. Just as soon as she received the letter, she became an energetic one. Kakura tried to deny that, and Porto reminded her that she would keep her company if she ever felt down again. They then changed the subject and discussed what they should eat. Yoshina wanted to eat something sweet, but they told her to finish her job first. Kakura was the first one to get ready, and she said goodbye to her friends and got to work with a smile on her face. In the next scene, Sawadi warns Lola to wear more clothes while the window is open. She said that what she was wearing was more than enough. Sawadi then asked if there was something she would like to eat. She responded that she would get it right away if there was. She told him that although she appreciated that he was taking care of her, she could still do most things by herself. The reason why Sawadi was bothering Lola this much was because they had been blessed with a new life. Lola was pregnant. Sawadi defended himself by saying that in his previous life, early pregnancy was really scary for various reasons. The maid came and informed Sawadi that it was time for him to leave and asked if he had finished his preparations. Sawadi mumbled some words but stopped when the maid told him a man shouldn't act like that. Childbirth was some time away, so she told him to calm down and focus on his work. Lola agreed with the maid and told him that for the sake of their baby, he should make sure to do thorough research and come back. Sawadi was finally convinced enough not to bother her and left there after telling her to be careful. He met Professor Marino, and he thought his child was born and this monkey he was holding was the child. Sawadi told him that it was just an artificial beast, and his child hadn't even been born yet. Sawadi asked what he was thinking about his animal cafe. He allowed the artificial beast to interact with a large number of people to examine the development of their self-awareness, and he made it into a business animals coffee shop. Marino found this very typical of him. The original hypothesis regarding the self-awareness of the artificial beast was related to the progress of time based on some reports received from various places, but it was quickly disproved by reports of those sources. When Sawadi looked into it more closely, he found out that while it usually takes about a year, in crowded places like army bases, cavalry units, and dragon camps, it could happen in just 6 months. So he decided to turn one of his shops into an animal cafe using artificial creatures to test this further. He wished he could have researched more slowly though. Marino said he had managed to put off the situation with reasons, but when the royal family got involved it was hard for him. He told him that if the artificial beast were to develop self-awareness and go on a rampage or something, Not only he and Sawadi but their entire family could be punished for treason. Since artificial creature studies alone wouldn't be enough, he had invited a noble named Tarcel. He was an expert on magical tools, and he was going to join them as a guest professor. They had to prepare as much as possible before things became official. They also hoped this shop does well too. But research was the main goal, so Sawadi wasn't really thinking about the shop's profit. If it doesn't work, he would have anything available at MSG to take advantage of it. If that was the case, Marino said he would also provide some operating funds from the research lab. That would help him a lot because it was always better to have more funding for MSG. Thus, the Animal Cafe, which started with a lot of expectations, turned out unexpectedly successful. Day after day, the lines never stopped. They quickly ran out of artificial beast pets. He had to stay up all night to finish it as fast as he could. One day, Shiriki came. Today he was in a once-in-a-lifetime moment, risking everything as a man. His opponent was the MSG representative, a magician, and a man who rose to the rank of a true noble, his younger brother Sawadi. He bowed to him and asked him for Schenker, the street, and his band. To show how much he wanted, he even did a handstand. He then explained that he was getting married soon and their father gave his blessing. He wanted to have an extravagant wedding, so he wanted to borrow Schenker Street and the music band. Sawadi asked when his wedding was because his music group had worked in the capital, but they might be available by the end of this month. Shiriki spaced out seeing Sawadi like that. He said that he had changed. Sawadi was surprised and told him to just bring his fiancée over and they would talk after that. After that, they prepared a huge wedding ceremony for Shiriki. Not only did the band sing, but Sawadi also sang. At the end of their wedding, Rina, Shiriki's wife, mentioned how amazing Sawadi was. She had been living in Torkieva and she had heard all sorts of rumors, but seeing the city firsthand like this, she couldn't help but feel a bit nervous. Shiriki said his mother hadn't returned since she went to the capital and his dad was lenient with them and let them do whatever they wanted. Even so, by the time Sawadi could stand and walk, he already could read, write, and do math. He knew things that his brother didn't know, even more complicated stuff. He even learned how to use magic by himself. Before they knew it, they, his brother's father, and everyone around him realized he was special, and they distanced themselves from him. And it was around that time when he was asked to go pick up Sawadi at the town councilor's house. He started imitating them, acting foolishly, and got seriously injured. He managed to heal himself with his magic, but then couldn't move because he overused it. But now he was more relieved seeing Sawadi being just like them. That day, on the way back from picking him up, Shiriki's older brother told Shiriki that they should always be his foolish brothers. He told Rina that being left alone was bad, and that's why he wanted her to interact with Sawadi as normally as possible. Rina was more than fine with that. Sawadi was so happy that Rina was his sister-in-law, and congratulated his brother with the biggest smile on his face. Shiriki's eyes teared up seeing Sawadi so happy. After the wedding, Shiriki visited Sawadi again, but Sawadi refused to talk to him, claiming he was busy. Though Shiriki hadn't even spoken yet, Sawadi could already tell he was going to be a bother. Shiriki mentioned how there had been too many attendants at the wedding ceremony and not enough food or drink for them. The girls overheard their conversation and recalled how chaotic that day had been. Shiriki then presented a gift, which Sawadi gladly accepted. Curious, he asked what it was, and Shiriki explained that it was a specialty from his wife Rina's family home. Knowing Sawadi's love for cooking, he thought it would be a fitting gift. As Sawadi opened the bottle, he wondered if it was some kind of seasoning. Dipping his finger into a taste of the sauce, he was immediately struck by its flavor. Without hesitation, he rushed to Rina. Surprised to see him with Shiriki, Rina asked what was wrong. Sawadi grabbed her arms and urgently demanded to know where she had gotten that soy sauce. In the next scene, Sawadi shows the soy sauce Rina gave to him to Lola. He said that the family of his sister-in-law came from across the Boo Sea about 200 years ago, and it seemed they were now living together on the west side of Tarababara. He also borrowed the seal from his sister-in-law. Lola asked if that meant there would be people from another world like him in Tarababara. Sawadi didn't know that yet, but at the very least it was certain that people from another world were here in the past, and he believed there was something connected to Japan. That's why he wanted to follow that clue. Lola seemed uneasy about the situation. Noticing her concern, Sawadi reassured her that he was simply excited. He had never imagined encountering another person from Japan in this world. He assured her that he had no desire to return to Japan. He was just curious about why he had been reincarnated and whether there was any purpose behind it. Trying to be supportive, Lola encouraged him to go and seek answers firsthand. As his wife, she believed in him and felt it was her duty to encourage and send him off. However, what truly worried her wasn't doubt in him. It was the fear that he might never return. She dreaded the thought of him disappearing from her world forever. Though she didn't want to reveal her vulnerability, she couldn't hold back her tears at the thought of losing him. Sawadi embraced her gently and told her she didn't have to hide her feelings. He reminded her of the promise he had made before, that he had chosen to stay here and had no intention of leaving. He vowed to always remain by her side. Feeling reassured, Lola thanked him and kissed him. After she calmed down, Sawadi lay on her lap, and she asked what he was planning about the trade expedition member. He said that Jiren was chosen as the leader, but so many people wanted to join, so that was turned into a huge commotion. In that case, Lola said she had a good idea. Sawadi had a bad feeling about his wife's plan. In the next scene, we see Jiren presenting the MSG Adventurer Festival with a lot of enthusiasm. They were going to determine the strongest among the escort candidates, and that person would select the members. The MSG Adventurer Festival was held using the pool during winter break, and somehow it seemed that all the pent-up frustration Lola had from holding back from participating in various things finally exploded there. She didn't come to the sports day and the wedding day, so she was looking forward to it. Lola had always looked so calm, but she enjoyed the events more than Sawadi thought. He asked if she felt cold. He made a magical heating mat and magical heated blanket for her, so she was good. He said that those products were just prototypes and couldn't adjust the temperature precisely. Lola wondered what he was thinking about the tournament as their master. He thought about it and said when it came to combat he was completely clueless. But lately he had someone tagging along as his bag carrier and vanguard, Rafi, and she was a great sword user. She looked small and unreliable, but she had the strength to take down a dragon on her own. There was also Mamu, a sheepfolk he had once seen in performance, and an amateur like him could tell that her staff skills were impressive. Roast and Mince were on a whole other level when it came to combat skills. While he was about to talk about the rest, Pickles won against her first match. Pickles was the person who was most likely to win this competition. Mince and Roast also won their matches. With all, the event went smoothly, and finally it was time for the semi-final match. Roast was facing Pickles, and the battle was harsh. While healing Rafi, Sawadi asked if that was the move she pulled on the Roast in the second round. She explained that since she was light and agile, she focused on fast, consecutive strikes. Since the arena was surrounded by walls, she came up with a strategy like that. Ultimately, her attack was countered, and she ended up losing. Sawadi was shocked that Roast could copy her just by looking at it once. That wasn't the only reason, as Lola said. She said that when it comes to speed, strike, and accuracy, Roast was better than her. Rafi admitted that she felt jealous because her fighting instincts were amazing, but it seemed like it was about time she was losing. She couldn't even breathe against Pickles' attacks. Before Pickles did the last move on her, she knew it was over for her. And with that, Roast got out with one hit and the winner was Pickles. Lola said that was because she had been fighting this entire match with only half of her power. On the other hand, Mince was fighting pretty well. Mince was quite strong, but the opponent was not weak too. Her spear technique was quite impressive. The Scalekin tribe was known for their tough scales and strong physiques, making them natural physical elites. Because of this, many tended to neglect their defenses. Despite that, one fighter skillfully parried attacks and deflected them back at her opponent. Her opponent's hands grew numb, and she seemed to have lost her strength. Sensing an opportunity, Mince launched an attack and secured victory. The final match was between Pickles and Mince, a highly anticipated showdown. However, it ended in a surprisingly anticlimactic manner. As Mince swung her weapon, Pickles effortlessly dodged and swiftly defeated her, claiming victory. In the end, the results were just as expected, and the trading team members were successfully chosen. More than anything, it was a relief to see that Lola's mood had improved. In the next scene, a girl asks her brother if their journey is over. He responded that from today, they were going to be living in this town together. He asked his little sister if she was worried, and she said that she wasn't, because she was with her brother. As they walked around in the streets exploring the town, he saw a man calling people to pray for God. He started to wonder what was so great about God. He didn't believe there was a way something so convenient existed. If there was a God, then humble people like him or the monks would be saved, so it didn't make any sense to him. A woman appeared in front of them and asked if they saw someone who looked just like her. He seemed annoyed and said he didn't know while walking away from her. They went to a restaurant and ordered udon for themselves. While eating his meal, he mentioned to his boss about the woman who asked him the question and asked if he had known her. His boss called his name, and when he turned to his back, he saw everyone glaring at him. Nashida finished his meal and immediately left the restaurant. When they got out, he asked what it was all about. His boss told him that the girl he was talking about belonged to Schenker, and everyone in this town survived thanks to Schenker. He warned him not to talk about this woman and his question too much in public. While walking around with his boss, he noticed that even though people were slaves, they were living better than commoners, which made no sense to him. He continued working that day, and his boss told him that they were going to make deliveries to the liquor stores next. When he was done with the last one, his boss asked how Rosami was doing because she was home alone. Nashita said he didn't have anywhere to leave Rosami. He would like to send her to take lessons, but he didn't have enough money yet, so he was home. At night, he went home and Rosami greeted him with a scolding session for being late. She was starving, so he said he would get dinner ready right away. Rosami asked about his plans for tomorrow. He said he had the day off and asked if she wanted to go anywhere. She wanted to go shopping and to the theater and eat some crepes. That night, they prepared a meal and ate together. When she went to sleep, Nashita started to think about what his boss said. He said that their innkeeper didn't mind taking care of Rosami while Nashita was at work. Even though they had no ties, the boss took care of them and provided a place to stay and work. He didn't want to cause any more trouble for this reason. When the morning arrived, he was wasted because he drank too much last night. He decided to get ready right away and told Rosa about it. But Rosa wasn't in her bed. Rosami searched the whole room and around the neighborhood, but he couldn't find her, so he thought she might have gone to the boss's house. The boss and his wife seemed surprised because she wasn't there, and they had plans to head out this morning. The boss's wife seemed worried that this might be a kidnapping case. The boss told his wife that he was going out for a bit and took Nashita too. They went to Chicken's office and the boss started begging her to help them find Nashita's little sister. Nashita tried to stand up to his boss, who was literally on the floor, but he told him to stay out of this. He said that those siblings have gone through the same kind of life he did, so he can't ignore them. He thinks of them like his own children, so he is as affected as Nashita. Chicken was shocked and told him to relax and raise his head. She then told Iska to call someone for her. The person they called was Solmetra. Chicken explained that when it comes to finding people, this girl had plenty of experience and connections, so they could rely on her. Chicken gave the name of the girl and told her that the girl she was looking for was Nashita's little sister. Solmetra immediately recognized Rosa and asked if she was the girl with the sunflower hair clip. She remembered the meeting once when he was with his sister. The boss said he was going to search the neighborhood again with his coworkers and requested Solmetra to search around town with Nashita. The boss scolded Nashita for being too silent and reminded him that Rosami only had him. With that, the search for Rosa started. They asked people, but the responses were negative. Nashita wondered if Solmetra was good at finding people because she was always searching for a person who looked just like her. They continued looking for Rosami, but the more they searched, the more Nashita started to feel worse. Someone said someone at the central food stalls saw a kid like the one they were looking for, so they started running. Nashita questioned why it was always him who ended up in situations like this. He fell and started crying while asking the question, "Why me?" Meanwhile, somewhere on the street, Rosami was sobbing. She was waiting for his big brother to come and save her. While crying, a woman approached her and held her hand. Nashita sat on a bank while Solmetra looked at him worried. He eventually said that he ran away. He said that his sibling and he ran to this town to escape debt collectors. They were tricked by bad people and ended up with a huge amount of debt. After that, their parents died from an illness and they had no way to pay it off. With no relatives to support them, they thought they could start over if they could escape to this faraway town. Even though they escaped, Nashita had no dreams, no hopes, and nothing he wanted to achieve. So, at the very least, he wanted to make sure his little sister grew up to be a happy and respectable adult. Before leaving headquarters, Chicken asked Nashita if he wanted them to look for his sister, and Nashita realized that he relived that she was gone. Solmetra said she once had a little sister. She was her twin sister who looked just like her, but she doubted she would ever see her again. They lost their parents in a fire. She suffered severe burns back then, so bad that she could barely walk on her own. Since they had no relatives, her sister took care of her while working day and night to earn money for her treatment and their living expenses. Despite being completely exhausted, she never once complained and kept working hard. But that kind of life couldn't last forever. They were eventually sold to different slave traders. At that moment, Solmetra felt relieved because she wouldn't be a burden to her sister anymore. She thought she wouldn't have to suffer this miserable pain anymore. And so, in this town, she became her master's slave. Now she lives without any troubles. Even now, she thinks about her sister every day. She regretted not reaching out and grabbing her hand back then because even though they would have been taken away and died, they would at least be together. And his sister wouldn't have had to go through such heartbreaking pain. While she was telling him this, Nashita remembered the time when she asked him if he knows someone who looked just like her. Solmetra said she wanted to blame herself at first, but now she just hoped that if her sister was still alive somewhere, or even if she wasn't there, at least one person would remember her when they saw her. She kneeled and held Nashita's hand, telling him that if he could reach her, he should hold on to her properly for the people searching with him. He should do that for Rosami, and for himself too. After this emotional talk, they continued to look for Rosami, and someone said they went into Leroy's diner with Roast. They immediately ran towards the diner, but when they arrived, Nashita hesitated to open the door. He didn't know how he was supposed to face her now, worrying that he might end up hurting her. But when Solmetra held his hand, he found the strength he needed and opened the door. Solmetra found Roast and started walking towards them. And Rosami turned and saw her big brother. She started running towards him and hugged him really tight. Rosami was surprised that her brother was crying. Nashita started scolding her for disappearing on her own while sobbing, and Rosa joined him in apologizing. After that, Nashita took her to his boss's house and left her to his wife's care while he worked. What happened that day was Rosami got frustrated that he wouldn't wake up in the morning and decided to go ahead by herself to check out the spot they had planned to go. Then she got lost on her way back and was rescued by Rosi from MSG. During this incident, his sister and he troubled many people, but it felt like they had been accepted in this town. While Solmetra was working, one of her friends came and asked if she had seen Chicken. Solmetra responded that she was at the slave traders with the master. Every so often they get defective slaves from different places. Her friend wondered if there were any handsome guys this time and then wondered what Solmetra's type was. When she said she wasn't interested in that, her friend figured that she already had someone. She was talking about Nashita, who always comes to see her. Suddenly, Chicken burst into the diner and asked if Solmetra was there. Meanwhile, Rosa and Nashita were walking, and Rosa wanted to eat as she was hungry. Nashita told her that the cupcakes were a gift, so they should share them with Solmetra. Rosa called him stingy and told him that he had been cold to Rosa lately. Nashita said he decided not to spoil Rosa so he could make her a proper adult. Nashita still didn't believe in God, but if God really did exist and could grant salvation, he would want it to be for Solmetra. He saw Solmetra finally getting back together with her little sister and decided that the strong, kind-hearted person who devotes herself to others, the one whose smile is the most fitting for this world, to give her all the miracles the world has to offer. In the next scene, Pickles is waiting for Bongo to prepare something delicious. Pickles eagerly ate it, finding it as tasty as it smelled. They wanted to give some to Sawadi too. Pickles asked what kind of food this was as it was delicious. While cooking, Bongo was just wondering what kind of place Tarababara would be. She didn't like the cold wind, but it must be cold. She never imagined she would end up traveling as a slave. Lutch came and hugged her wings because soon she would have to say goodbye to her winter fur. She said that Bongo hadn't let her touch her wings at all. Bongo didn't answer her and went outside. They walked in the street talking about the festival Sawadi threw. Lutch was a member of the folk and Bongo's roommate. Today she made a promise to go to the Mole Festival together. The Mole Festival was held because there were no events in winter. It was a festival Sawadi created on his own. Since it was a festival, some gods were properly worshipped. It was also a symbol of MSG and the protective god of Pickle the Good of Moles. In other words, the leader of the escort team heads north with the main character of this festival, Pickle, at the center. It was also a festival to pray for the success and safety of their trade team. Suddenly, Bongo noticed two men harassing a woman. Bongo immediately stood right in front of him and asked what he was doing. The men were pretty scared of her and asked who she was. Lutch told them that she was Bongo. It was enough to say her name and they almost pissed on their pants. They called her Silence. Before she could do something, they apologized and ran away. The woman they saved thanked them. Lutch warned the woman not to walk around alone at night. She mentioned her older sister, and then her older sister Solmetra came out. She was so worried about her. They all thanked Bongo and Lutch and they left. The festival looked pretty good. People were enjoying themselves. Lutch and Bongo went to see Magura, the god they were talking about. Pickles saw them and called them over. She was wearing a cute dress and looked like a princess in it. She had never dressed up like this, so she felt a bit awkward, although she was happy. She mentioned that Lola was participating too. They then went to pray. After enjoying the fest, they went to see Lola and Sawadi. They gave their gifts and Sawadi commented on how cool the mole Floutside was, but Lola didn't seem to agree with him. Sawadi found the gift Bongo had brought delicious and asked what it was. 5 years ago, Sawadi was even smaller and more unreliable than now. He was a bit of a worrying child, so she thought that Pickles and she had to always support him. But now, he had become a strong person, with someone just as wonderful by his side. Bongo was relieved that he was safe now. Chicken suggested bringing some snacks to the festival's main participants. They went to see Pickles and saw her surrounded by adventurers. She saw them and told them to sit there. They gave her some drinks and they all started enjoying the festival. Everyone hadn't changed at all. It was the same as when she came to this town 5 years ago. People offered her some food and helped her with anything all the time. Bongo found her environment noisy, simple, and warm. It was an important place for her. For some reason, she couldn't stop recalling old times today and realized how much she didn't want to leave this town. Pickles turned to Bongo and told her how delicious her fried bread was. After that, Bongo wanted to make sure to come back from their journey safely, along with plenty of stories to tell, and then eat, drink, and have a big celebration again. Lutch mentioned that ever since the caravan was decided, she had been worrying about her. She thought if they had gone together to the festival, she would feel a little better. That being said, she said she wasn't an adventurer, so there wasn't so much she could do. She hugged Bongo tightly and expressed her love for her friend. The next day, everyone got ready and Pickles announced that the MSG Tarababera trade caravan was departing. Around the time they found out that Lola was pregnant, Sawadi was about to begin advanced research on the self-awareness of the artificial animal. Then a letter suddenly arrived from the top ranks of the military, instructing him to create something that would be essential in future wars with surrounding countries. What they wanted was for him to make a plan to produce battle artificial animals. Sawadi couldn't believe they were serious at first. A colossal war machine was every man's dream. It seemed that even in this other world it was no different. After everything he went through in his previous life, he was naturally tempted by the idea for a moment. But they were talking about a colossal artificial creature, which was a whole different story. If that colossal artificial creature were to gain self-awareness and go out of control, it would be a disaster. And as expected, Professor Marino and he would hold responsibility. To avoid the worst-case scenario, they rushed to organize their modest research on the self-awareness of the artificial creature and use that as support to get the plan cancelled. When Marino came back, he informed him that he somehow managed to get them to reconsider the plan for now. Sawadi was so relieved at that time that he completely forgot. When Marino casually reports something with a smile, it always means he is about to say something outrageous. Sawadi was right. Marino told him that the royal family was connected to the plan. When Raffi heard that she found it amazing even though it was complicated, Sawadi told her that if the royal family directly told him to do it again, he would be forced to follow it, so nothing was amazing about this. And they could even call this power harassment. Raffi finally figured out why he had been sulking this whole time. She then wondered why they were in front of the station. Sawadi explained that even though the plan was cancelled, they still didn't know when they might ask them to do it again. Plus, they didn't know about the self-awareness of artificial creatures yet. If they continue their research, they will hit a dead end. So that's why he was thinking of getting help from magical tool studies. He asked her if she knew the industrial city of Sonardi. They had decided to invite the well-known magic tool craftsman Tarcel Lanza as a visiting professor. He sounded like an amazing person, but Sawadi had never met him before. He bet that he was one of those who didn't have any real talent or knowledge, yet took credit for the research of their subordinates and juniors, and got recognized because of his family background. He kept continuing to make judgments about this. Professor Raffi said he sounded like the type to NTR someone 3 times. She found his judgments harsh and wanted to puke a little, but Sawadi claimed that that was how mages were. When he was about to give an example of them when he was in the academy, Raffi told him to look over there because he had arrived. He unwillingly stood up to pick him up and told her to rent a carriage for him. He put on a business smile and showed him the paper he was holding. The professor thanked him for coming all the way here. Sawadi introduced himself, and the professor expressed his surprise about his young look despite the rumors about him being a genius. Sawadi was confused, so he pointed at the train he got off and said he was the one who created the first whale, an infinite train. He said he was part of the crew that worked on the great whale's traction and acceleration, and was there when the first whale was researched and assembled. As far as he remembered, all the researchers and technicians in Sonardi were instantly terrified by the advances of that technology. Sawadi smiled and said he'd just come up with the basic theory. This wasn't the ideal place for talking, so they left there to head to the academy. Raffi was waiting with the carriage and informed Sawadi that she had made the preparations. The professor asked who that girl was, and even from his attitude, Raffi was startled. Sawadi said she was his personal servant and added that if that was a problem, he could send her back. The professor found this quite conservative and said he wouldn't mind bringing her along. They went into the carriage, but the atmosphere was so weird that Raffi was sweating so much. She was shocked and confused by what he meant when he told him to bring her along. While on their way to the academy, Raffi started to understand the prejudice Sawadi mentioned earlier. At least in this town, people didn't think highly of mages. There were plenty of people who had suffered because of them. Wizards, too, didn't care about anyone except themselves. However, this person's atmosphere was somehow similar to Sawadi's. As she was thinking about that, his tummy growled so loudly that both of them looked at her in shock. She started shivering and apologized, explaining that she overslept and hadn't eaten anything. A more shocking thing happened, and the professor said he started to feel a little hungry too and suggested stopping somewhere to eat. They went to the diner and sat together. The professor asked if this cafe allowed both nobles and slaves together. Sawadi said this was his shop and asked if that bothered him. He responded that this was normal in Sonardi. Sawadi was glad that the rumors about the progressive city were true. The professor then asked if he made a profit running a business for slaves. Elof brought their menu, and the professor ordered something filling and a beer. Sawadi said he would have a donut and coffee. The professor then turned to Raffi and asked if she wasn't ordering anything. She was shocked, so Sawadi told her to order anything she wanted. Raffi excitedly thanked him for the treat and ordered her food too. While eating, the professor told Sawadi that his specialty was magical artifact studies, but he also had some knowledge of artificial demonology. He said that it was about time for both of them to have an open and honest talk. Sawadi was shocked, while Raffi wondered what they were going to talk about. The more they ate, the more the conversation kept going. Sawadi mentioned integrating a supercharger and controlling it from the outside, but he didn't agree with him, saying that the existing materials wouldn't be strong enough to withstand it. Their conversation went smoothly like butter, and they had a little bonding over the food and talking about their interests and plans. They eventually agreed on a good idea and decided to start as soon as tomorrow. Elaf came and asked if it was okay for her to close the shop. They didn't even realize how many hours they spent talking. They went outside, and while talking, Sawadi realized that Professor Marino would be mad. The professor apologized for testing Sawadi like that. He said that most of the famous researchers he had met so far had been lacking in both technology and knowledge, but now he felt reassured. He reached out to his hand and said if it was him, he felt like they could have done something fun. At that moment, Sawadi realized that he was the one who should apologize. At some point, he started acting just like the nobles, labeling people and assuming what kind of person they were without trying to understand them. He always had people around him who truly saw him for who he was and who valued him, and yet he was so judgmental. He smiled politely and shook his hand, adding that he was looking forward to working with him. With Professor Tarcel, he felt like things would go well, until that day. In the testing room, Tarcel kept acting like every artificial animal they had made was his own kid, and annoyed the hell out of Sawadi that he had enough of him and started fighting. He yelled at him, saying that every single time his research gets delayed because of this. Tarcel called him a bastard and said he didn't have enough love for them. Sawadi told him to go to an animal cafe if he wanted to play with an artificial animal. Professor Marino wasn't sure if they were getting along or fighting because while cursing each other, they also expressed how amazing animals were. After working on the research for a while, Rafi and Sawadi started walking home, while Sawadi was complaining about Tarcel again. Rafi asked why he didn't get someone else to come if he was going to complain that much. He said that Tarcel was certainly skilled as a technician, and he knew a lot about artificial creatures. Plus, he understood his explanations right away and his advice was always spot on. He said that he made the prototype of the magic heater they talked about before. He was thinking of criticizing it, but it turned out to be perfect. That's why he was planning to discuss the better version of the magic kettle with him too. While he was saying good things about Tarcel, he noticed Rafi grinning, so he asked the reason. Rafi said they were getting along pretty well, but he was refusing to accept that. Some time had passed since the trade expedition team headed to Tarabara, and the band team made their back to the royal capital. The days had gradually grown longer, plants and trees were blooming, and a gentle and warm breeze blew through the town while Lola was reading her book. Birds glide through the sky and animals roam the fields. People are busier than ever now. In this lively season, if you wonder what Sawadi was feeling like, it would be proper to say that he was about to throw up. Marino told him that Lord Estoma ordered him to come to his room and said he should hear it straight from him. That look on Marino's face and a direct order wasn't something good, so this is why he was feeling like he was going to throw up. He had so many questions in his head about this meeting, but he knew there was no way it was the good news. He eventually knocked on Estoma's door and went inside. The moment he went inside, Estoma loudly announced that he was officially assigned as an associate professor in the Artificial Magic Research Lab at Torquiva Academy of Magic. Sawadi instinctively bowed and said it was an honor. While showing his respect, he was questioning what he had heard. Suddenly, Baron Gossin came and shocked Sawadi. Apparently, he had been entrusted with the role of a messenger. They had exchanged letters, but this was the first time they had met in person as a professor since the wedding. They started chatting and catching up. Sawadi then asked if he meant about the associate professor position when he said, messenger. He said that was a part of it, but he had something to discuss regarding the southern dungeon zone managed by Viscount Lisden. Dungeons were scattered throughout the land. Among them, towns have been built around the less dangerous dungeons, and those areas are set as special zones. These zones allowed adventurers and knights to manage the monster population and harvest valuable materials like magic crystals, meat, leather, and so on. They were processed and sold to support local economies and benefit the nation. Near Torquiva, across the river, there was also a special dungeon zone, but lately, the monsters had multiplied beyond control and started escaping outside. He believed Viscount Lisden had sent a request for hunting assistance to the professor since he had a significant number of private soldiers. Judging by his expression, it seemed like the request was pretty unreasonable. Because they were dealing with a common noble, they were saying absurd things like selling them slaves or having guards stationed 24/7 without offering anything in return. That's why Sawadi rejected everything. That being said, they can't just leave it as it is, and the military can't just intervene so easily. Baron Gossin said he consulted Lord Estoma about what to do, and he suggested making Professor Sawadi an associate professor. Sawadi asked if it was okay for someone like him, a former commoner, to become an associate professor. Estoma stated that there was no problem because, considering his achievements, it was only natural. Whether Viscount Lisden was a good or bad noble, If he held a noble title as an associate professor, he wouldn't make such unreasonable demands. There was also one more thing. Gossen asked Sawadi if he could name his son after him. He didn't mind, but mentioned that a name was something that held great meaning. He said that it wasn't a problem, and his wife insisted that he got Sawadi's permission for this. After the meeting ended, he went to the lab and informed others about the news. He then went to his wife and told her the news, to which she responded with a warm hug. Sawadi's mind was as bright and lively as springtime in Torquiva now. Meanwhile, at the Dungeon Special Zone, Chikin and Asuka gave reports about their current situation. Even after considering all factors and incorporating their conditions, they believed there would still be significant profit. They thanked them for their opinion and said they would proceed with the discussion under these terms. They felt bad for asking and making them come all this way too many times, but Chikin politely said she was just glad they reached an agreement. They also said thanks to Sawadi becoming an associate professor, their bald Viscount Lisden could finally calm down a bit. Apparently, the moment Sawadi became an associate professor, he started acting all excited and silly. The girl said she wanted to relax in Torquiva soon and go shopping. She then asked where Chikin bought that hairpin and scarf because she liked how they looked. Chikin said she bought it from an oily massage shop opened in MSG. They continued their cute conversation like that. Lately, Roast finds herself remembering that dirty alley with a musty smell. When she looked up, she saw a red sky. She couldn't tell if it was her hair, blood, or the sunset. On that day, she chose to fight, and right now she was in the dungeon ordering her subordinates to fight. She counted on Yanbo. Thanks to Mamu and Yanbo's efforts, they managed, though with difficulty, to restrain the incoming pig-like monsters with chains. Today's haul was quite the jackpot. Some of the female workers joked that with this many monsters showing up, they could save up for their wedding expenses much faster. Roast laughed and teased them, saying they should probably find someone to marry first. They asked Yanbo if it would be more efficient to keep hunting even after the request's done, and she said she would pass this one. It was cramped, dark, and damp. The gear was good, but it was hard to move around and it got sweaty. The others agreed with her. The monsters were strong too, but what scared some of them was the mages. If one of their spells hits them by mistake, it would be over for them. Suddenly, the smell changed, and one of them warned everyone that the birds were almost there. Roast told everyone to get ready because they would be here any second. The birds were demon sparrows. Even though they were fast and a pain to deal with, the girls managed to kill every one of them. Yanbo was exhausted and asked if there was any left. The other girl told everyone to watch out because more were coming. The one who could sniff tried to count the birds, but this time there were so many of them. It was obvious that they couldn't hold them off. Rose stepped in as the vice leader and killed most of the birds to help the girls. She told everyone that if anyone dies in a place like this, she will kill them again. She told them to give it everything they had. When they finally left there, everyone was starving. Good thing they didn't have any serious injuries and were just sticky from the blood. Everyone was amazed by Roast, and their respect for her increased a lot. The other team went back into the dungeon, and they were the last ones to eat lunch. Roast told them that they were heading to the third floor next and advised them to get some rest after lunch. The girls ate, chatted, and rested for a while just as she told them. Meanwhile, Roast was lying on the grass and had a glimpse of what her old life was like. She remembered the cuffs in her hand and how she reached for the Guardian's knife. She was thinking about her past even while they were heading back home. It wasn't like she hated being an adventurer, and in fact, this job suited her well. She was pretty satisfied with her current life. After all, for her, the only choice was to fight or die. She wondered what the reason could be for her to feel like that. At the very least, ever since she came to this city, she had other choices too. She did have options, she just didn't know how. She wondered if it was because fighting was the only thing she knew. She was questioning who she was when she saw Mintz. She teased her, saying she returned early and asked about today's hunt. Mintz responded that they had 65 kills. 2 red bats showed up on the east side, 3rd floor, and told her to stay alert. Rose said they had 70 and completely wiped out the demon sparrows on the 2nd west floor. Mintz then mentioned that they took down 6 grazing wolves on their way back. The competition between them affected their team too. When they were done arguing, Rose decided that she didn't even need to ask Mintz about the things she had been thinking. They went to pray and she prayed while thinking about Pickles and Vongo. Throughout the day, she did her daily work and carefully examined what other people were doing. She watched Pickles, Chicken, and Kakla and wondered what would happen if she didn't have to fight and what she really wanted. As she was done with her work in the chicken's office, she went out and looked at the sun. When her teammates called for her, she realized that she was fine with how things were right now and she could always choose later. 2 weeks later, there was a crowd at the base building and Kakla and the other workers were trying to calm everyone. Meanwhile, inside his office, Sawadi was freaking out. He was telling himself that he didn't do anything wrong and that it wasn't his fault. He didn't even know how he ended up like this. It started around the end of winter. They had been receiving repeated requests from Viscount Lisden of the Dungeon Special Zone. Most of them were unreasonable, so they kept rejecting them. But it felt like they were looking down on them. Sawadi was granted a noble title, and with Lord Estoma's support he could finally negotiate equally. Now he was thinking maybe he would squeeze them dry right down to their last hair. For 1 year they agreed to buy magic crystals at double the price. So he told MSG to announce to the adventurers that they could hunt prey without being taxed. But the adventurers got fired up more than expected. Hundreds of dungeon beasts were brought in every single day. It was only natural because that's how adventurers were, working hard to earn as much as they could for their masters. They weren't to blame, so they rushed to build meat and leather factories in the southern base, and MSG's been doing their best with limited staff to process everything somehow. But since dungeon meat was an unstable resource that appeared out of nowhere, they couldn't just flood the market all at once. So they were struggling with finding sales routes. The headquarters were already short on people and struggling with everyday tasks. And now, after someone leaked the info, meat and livestock industry workers, afraid of losing their jobs, and butchers and restaurants hoping to score cheap meat started swarming in daily. Lola listened to what Sawadi was explaining. After he finished explaining, Sawadi sincerely apologized to Lola for acting without thinking. Lola said even after all that, he wasn't planning to just take the magic crystals and leave the culled monsters behind like the knights do. Sawadi confirmed this and said he wanted to give the people of the town better food and make them smile. But he then admitted that what he had just said was a lie. He said it might be because of his nature as a merchant. He was running this business to make money in the first place, and even if it was tough, he wanted to keep going as long as it turned a profit. Lola said he was still the same as always, and that part of him wouldn't change. She said it was a wife's duty to support her husband after finishing writing her letter. She said the army wouldn't act right away, but they should at least do some of it. Sawadi thanked her and said he had also been sending letters to as many places as he could, so he believed they could get through this. Lola told him that she really hoped he would start thinking things through a bit more before something serious happens. For the sake of their baby, Sawadi promised to be more careful with his actions from now on. Before he left, Lola asked how the other victims were doing. He said he was going to headquarters to figure that out. Even though Lola smiled and told him to be careful on his way, Sawadi knew what she meant and that she saw right through him. At the MSG, Kakla was trying to line up the people so that the staff could guide them. She announced that the building was extremely crowded inside, and if they wanted to apply for dispatch, they must go to the right counter. The staff were working their butts out to organize people. At the office, Chicken was so tired that she couldn't even move while Sawadi sat in front of her fidgeting. He apologized and admitted that it was all his fault. Chicken told him that she wasn't mad or anything. It had been a while since she worked this hard and her body was not keeping up, and she admitted that she was partly at fault this time too. After dealing with so many ridiculous requests, she finally lost it and snapped a little. So she wanted to discuss something about the factory. She said some local housewives contacted them, asking if there was any work, and she wondered if they might be able to hire them temporarily. Sawadi said it was fine and left it to her. He told her to pay them the standard wage, and if she needed, she could even add a little bonus. He also had something related to that to discuss. It looked like they would need more people for the research side too. So he had been thinking of buying a larger number of slaves around here. She said that it would be great if they could have some of them too, but they didn't have enough housing space for the new slaves. Even if they house 4 people per room, they could only add about 50 people at most. While being impressed that she memorized all that, he said he had been discussing it with the town chairman for a while on this topic. He was thinking of buying houses around Schenker Street. Right now he has money and noble connections on his side. She said she didn't really mind that but wondered how many houses he was thinking of buying. When he said all of them, Chicken was shocked, so he repeated that he was going to buy all of them. To calm her down, he said he was going to buy up all the land around here and tear down the current buildings and replace them with apartment complexes. But she was even more confused because she didn't know what apartment complex it was. He explained that they build upward and make them at least 5 stories tall. That way, they could house way more people. And then, he wanted each floor to have about 10 decently sized rooms and build around 10 buildings like that. Chicken started to calculate the number of people that would be living in 10 buildings like that and started sweating. Rather than calling it a base, she said it was more like a town. She closed her notebook and started breathing in and out to calm down. When the registration shift ended, the workers finally relaxed a little bit. The dungeon stuff was still working though. Still, it had been a while since it felt like this. It was like when MSG was first established. Now that they mentioned it, Kakla asked if they hadn't joined from the very beginning. They said yes. Back then too, every day felt like this. Suddenly they heard Sawadi and Chicken fighting again. Sawadi was saying that they were completely understaffed right now, but Chicken found his solution bold. She was trying to stop him from doing that while grabbing his leg and begging him to consider more long-term. He said he would buy tons of male slaves too. She begged him to get some educated slaves too, at least hiring people who could do math. The workers realized that it had been a while since they had seen them fight like this, just like the old times. Apparently, this would happen every day. In the next scene, Jiren was telling her teammates that Sawadi had gone to the office and got an idea and rushed over. They were shocked and said that was too much. She said they could never know what he was going to do today. He always surprised them. Pickles joined them and said in the end, he was just thinking about them. After all, their master was that kind of guy, because he was Sawadi the Merciful. This whole mess was his fault for not thinking ahead. He was the one who would have to take responsibility anyway, and if it came to this, then he would do whatever it takes to make the best of it. Starting today, right there, the second chapter of MSG began. In the next scene, Pickles' team was on the road. Jiren asked how much farther to the next town, and she said it would probably take around 3 more days. They told them to buy any rare items that they found at Tarababara, but those might be too much. Jiren smelled her shoes and didn't want to camp in those stinky boots another night. She wished they could use the train like the band team. She missed the bath back at headquarters. If they had the train, they could go there and back in no time for sure. Pickles responded that it can't be helped now. The band team was invited after all. Normally, not even commoners, let alone slaves, would be allowed on. While they were talking, Bongo came and informed them that they were coming. The train was approaching, so Pickles told everyone to stop the wagons and get ready for battle. The sound of the train attracted magical beasts, and they were waiting there to hunt them. As they started killing the beasts, some of them saw Bongo. She gave them a signal to look at their west side, and when they looked, they were being chased by a wet weasel. She informed Pickles that they were coming this way and asked if she was in. She said yes and got ready for her piercing strike. With one shot, the monster was injured. It was still a bit off, so it wasn't dead yet. Bongo helped her and stabbed the monster. The people they saved thanked them. They were shocked by the way she took it down so easily with that powerful bow. It was like watching a legendary god or archery in action. They said they wandered through this land and his name was Rapider. Pickles introduced herself too. Rapider wanted to offer her a token of their gratitude. Pickles said it was fine and they would be leaving here soon anyway. He asked which direction they were headed in because they would like to send her a small gift as thanks. She said they were heading south along the railway. They got the information and greeted each other before leaving. At night, they set up their camps and one of their friends was crying because her sleeping bag had a hole in it. She said they should at least use better fabric as this was an official supply and criticized that they are always cheaping out on stuff like this. As she called Jiren a cheapskate, she heard her and asked who she was calling that. She started yelling at her that this was a high-end sleeping bag made of dungeon fur, and she had worked hard to get it even one deal cheaper. She told them to stop messing around and clean themselves up. Speaking of dungeons, one of them noticed that they only grab the magic crystals in this dungeon and throw out the rest of the meat and fur. They were sure Sawad would tell them to take all of it back. They cooked a delicious meal for everyone and ate it together by the fire. Someone had a soy sauce which alerted the others because if someone finds out, they would screw. She said this was something she bought with her own money. She had been thinking about opening a shop someday, and she believed soy sauce might become popular in town. So if she learns how to use it now, she could make a lot of money. When she looked at the retired slaves, even if they got to do what they wanted freely, they still had to work hard and learn stuff to make it happen. Pickles overheard them and wondered if Bongo had something she wanted to do. As for her, she still didn't have any plans yet. While sleeping with Bongo at their tent, she was informed that the Senators from earlier today were here. Ryder apologized for coming so late at night and gave their gifts to them. Pickles thanked them for going out of their way. He then said they had got a bit of a troublesome guy tagging along. Pickles asked what he meant, and he said he was a nobility and asked if she could hear him out. The guy came and introduced himself as a descendant of the royal family of the Wheel Empire, which once ruled half of this continent. He was Zakron, son of the great Abkab. When Pickles said her name, Zakron asked if she was from the mountain tribes. He said they were the Wheel Empire Liberation Army was planning to attack and conquer Sinaldi in the southwestern mountains soon, and they had been looking for someone with mountain experience. Pickles didn't even care about what he said. Jiren whispered to Rapider asking if centaurs had people like mages or nobles too. He said they didn't really have them since they didn't have any other races in their village. Those with old bloodlines were naturally seen as nobles. She asked if this guy had been saying some sketchy stuff. He apologized to her and said he tends to get carried away. After he mentioned what had happened earlier, he insisted on meeting the God Archer. Zakron said they would take over Sinaldi, a key base full of resources that machine mages rely on. They would also take the people there as hostages. From Sinaldi, he wanted to use her speed and strength to seize other important areas that would force the mages to accept a peace deal. For hundreds of years, the mages from beyond the northern Styx Sea have stolen their lands and crushed their pride, making them suffer in silence. But now, He believed that their time had come, and they would restore this continent to what it was meant to be. He asked her, the legendary god of archery Pickles, to join them in restoring the Wheel Empire to glory. Everyone held their breath waiting for her answer, and she smiled, telling him to do what they wanted to do, and wishing him a piece of good luck. She was sure that he had never even seen a mage or a real city before, and told him to stop dreaming in his little closed-off world and get out there and take a look at the real world. She said if a mage gets serious, they could wipe out all of them, and this whole land in an instant. She mentioned that this entire continent, building cities, protecting them, even living, none of it works without mages around. He was so mad, but Pickles was not stepping back. She told him that pride can't feed them or keep them safe. Back when she was in that village, suffering, struggling, and feeling so sad, even when she was starving with no way out, those so-called proud centaurs never did a single thing to help her. All of them in MSG were saved by the mages and people he kept mocking. They were all saved and supported by mages and those around them. She told him that if he kept mocking the people they loved, she wouldn't show him any merch. Shaking and sweating, Zachrin called her a traitor and tried to take out his sword. But looking at Bongo, Pickles, and the others waiting, ready to attack, he turned his back on them. Rapiter apologized for dragging them into all this trouble. One of them wanted to ask her something. They wondered if it was true that everyone in the Mage City could eat as much bread as they wanted. They said it was true, and it wasn't just bread. If they had money, they could eat all kinds of delicious food till they were full. They asked if there were ways to make a living. They weren't familiar with towns or money. They just wanted to give their families a better life. Rapiter said the South wasn't just Torquiva, and even the next town was big and always short on workers. After talking to them, they continued their way. Jiren wondered if they would come to their town. Pickles said no one could know that, but if they came, they were going to make sure to give them food, drinks, and a huge party like always. Jiren then asked if she remembered the bard's song they had heard when they left. She said she did. Jiren wondered how Pickles felt about it. She said she already knows the answer. In the next scene, MSG was closed because the new slaves arrived. The yard was so crowded. Sawadi did say to gather all the disabled slaves regardless of age or gender, but he couldn't believe he actually got this many, especially ones with missing limbs and injuries. Plus, they were all men. Perseus, the slave merchant, said it was the men who usually do the city's heavy labor, so it made sense that most slaves would be male. He told him to get them treated and start taking care of them after he finishes the contract. Chicken was inside the building as she worked all night to prepare lodging and what they would need. Perseus said they wouldn't cause any trouble right after treatment, but he still told him to stay with security just to be safe. Sawadi opened the mic and informed everyone that they would all be joining MSG as slave under Sawadi Slayra. The slave contract included certain rules they must follow. They would be required to obey the instructions of their MSG, and they wouldn't tolerate troublemakers. He told them that they were free to return to Perseus if they couldn't follow that and serve someone else. However, if they could follow all of this, he could heal everyone with his magic right now and guarantee them a decent life in this city. And those who worked diligently for 3 years would get a proper salary and be free to choose how they live, their job, and marriage within Torquiva. He said he would grant even greater freedom and personally promised them that. Everyone cheered him on after this speech. The other slaves wondered what was going on, and Hunt said they were buying up a ton of slaves. Sela wondered if there were any good men among them. Hunt told her to control herself as they would think she was a cheap woman. Sawadi felt the power in his hands as they cheered his name. He was totally tripping. When they went inside, Perseus said it was a wonderful day. They had long awaited the day Sawadi would ask for slaves without conditions. Perseus had been waiting with great anticipation. Sawadi said it was a bit too much, but he was impressed he managed to gather that many in such a short time. He said Sawadi was somewhat of a legend among slave traders. With just a word from Sawadi, anything could be arranged. Among those gathered here today, many have long awaited his call for years. He also kept aside a few male slaves he thought were promising. Some spent their savings, others relied on help from their relatives. Everyone had quietly waited for this day. Sawadi was surprised and asked why they didn't heal themselves if they did have that kind of money, because they could get healed for 10 gold coins. Perseus said to a commoner, 10 gold coins were something they would have to save for scraping together every last bit they had. It was an amount that would take years to save, and not all mages were as skilled as him. Even if they paid, there wasn't a guarantee they would be healed. Sawadi then asked what kind of people he had this time. He said he had butlers, merchants, foremen, cooks, teachers, craftsmen, blacksmiths, and a lot more. Among them was Leonard, the former steward of the Teos baronial family. He may be old, but not only does he have a commanding presence and refined knowledge, but his years of experience will surely be a great asset as an instructor. And Libra was a former regular soldier. He had plenty of knowledge and experience from the military. He was reliable and loyal. There was also Ophiuchus, a former underground doctor, and Cassiopeia, the son of a watchmaker. Sawadi told him to include the cost of feeding and housing them until now and recalculate the total, and he would send someone to pay later. He said he was counting on him from now on too, because he didn't want to owe him anything weird. Perseus said now that he was a noble, and soon he would have a child too. He suggested that he grow a beard once he was a bit older. Sawadi thought about it for a moment, then said no. He said he was just a rookie noble who used to be a commoner, and there was no way he could grow a beard and act all noble. After that, Perseus excused himself and said he would be here to help if he needed it. He was a tough man to deal with, so Sawadi was relieved when he finally left. Leonard came to Chikin and said the format was a bit off. Also, he told her to use seasonal greetings from the reference book he gave her. Chikin said it was just internal communication, but he said it didn't matter. From now on, no matter what kind of document it was, they would treat it as something worthy of being framed. She seemed pretty nervous. He told her that she would regret it if someone took advantage of her carelessness. Sawadi came and they greeted him. He greeted them back and wanted to borrow Chikin for a bit. He left the room to check on the others. Chikin poured a cup of tea and gave Sawadi. Sawadi asked how all the new slaves were doing, and she responded that they had all gotten into their duties without issue. Especially Leonard and the other older slaves, they were incredibly energetic, and she had learned so much from them. They had so much experience that she sometimes felt like she couldn't keep up. He told her not to worry about it. She helped build MSG from the ground up. That experience meant a lot, and she would surpass those old geezers in no time. He then asked how the business was looking. She said it had been steadily increasing. Adding more people had definitely helped, but getting a large buyer for dungeon meat was a huge plus. At this rate, they wouldn't have to wait for next year to pay off the planned site debt, even though the Shinker Town project was still underway. Honestly, she was glad he was able to rethink the plan and not buy thousands of slaves right away. When he said he was going to build a town, she seriously thought he had lost his mind. He said he was just caught up in the mood and it was just a silly joke. Not to mention he got scolded for an hour after he got home. While working, he asked how she was holding up and if he was getting enough rest. She said she had been getting proper sleep lately. He heard she had been making clothes too. She confirmed with him and said she finally managed to buy a sewing machine. The other day, she even found some rare fabric at the textile shop. She didn't realize that Sawadi knew about this until that moment. A loud scream was heard from even outside the room. Shaking, she asked how the hell he knew about this. He revealed that Roast mentioned it a while back. Chicken was so embarrassed. He asked if it was supposed to be a secret. She said it wasn't, but he wasn't confident enough to tell people, and it was something she was doing for fun. She had always been into fashion, and if she ever got the chance in the future, she would love to get into it as one of her businesses. Still, that was just a dream for the future. After their talk, Sawadi once again realized how far ahead everyone was already moving. The dungeon request chaos had finally settled down. The band team also returned safely to the royal capital the other day, and it was almost time for Lola to give birth. Summer was almost there, so he wondered what the trade expedition was up to. Meanwhile, Pickles and her team were finally home. They arrived at MSG, and Jiren informed Sawadi that the Turkiva Tarababara trade expedition team had completed their mission and returned today without a single loss. Chicken thanked them and stated that MSG could finally relax now that they had seen them all safe. She told them to take today and tomorrow off to rest. After that, Jiren would need to report to headquarters. At night, they would have a big celebration with all of MSG to welcome the team back. That was all from Chicken. Sawadi rolled up his sleeves and healed everyone's wounds immediately. He said he was glad they all made it back and thanked everyone for their great work. After that, everyone applauded for the team. 2 days passed as usual, and Jiren reported everything to Sawadi. He asked if the Ryuzoji main bloodline ended around a century ago. She said that there were very few people left who could even read or write. Now all their culture and skills are being passed down orally. Sawadi then asked Chikin to bring that. She brought a bonus reward for Jiren. She thanked them and said they would split it up among everyone, but she told them that this was her share. There was a separate portion prepared for the others. She was shocked and couldn't hold her mouth. Sawadi warned her to think a little before she spoke because she was going to be in a higher position from now on. Also, he asked her if he could borrow her journal for a while. She gave her and watched him read it in worry. Chicken informed Sawadi that they would go check the other items they brought back. They left there, but Jiren seemed uneasy about something. After checking everything, the celebration of the trade team's safe return had begun and everyone cheered their drinks for the team. While everyone was enjoying their time, Chicken noticed that the star of today's party looked awfully gloomy. She asked what was wrong and if it was alcohol. Jiren said she kept thinking she didn't actually live up to the expectations of Sawadi and questioned if she was able to do her job properly. Chicken understood why she felt like that and told her not to worry because that was probably not what it was about. She didn't know the full story either, but she knew she had completed her mission, and that was a fact. After the touching speech, she hit her and called her a hassle. She told her that whatever the outcome may be, she came back after doing something only she could do, so she must hold her head high and be proud of herself. She told her that once the party was over, she would officially take on a management position and would need to work even harder from now on. She said she was counting on her while helping her get up. Jiren seemed okay now and said she would be counting on her form too. Meanwhile, Sawadi was alone in his room and he was thinking. Lola came and said it was a pretty lonely party hall. He was surprised to see her and asked if she was okay. She said walking a little was good for the body. She asked if it was okay for him to leave the party like that, and he said he had already stopped by for a bit. It would make people feel awkward if the mage stayed there the whole time. Lola calmly grabbed the journal and started reading it. She said she heard about it and it seemed like he didn't find anything. She asked how he was feeling. He said he was shocked that he felt nothing. In his previous life, he didn't accomplish anything and left no trace at all, and before he knew it, he was dead. So, in this world he was reborn into, he wanted to understand the meaning of life and what he should be doing with it, whether or not there was something that connected him to his past life. He expected at least something, he just figured there had to be something there. It might be a reason to smile or a reason to cry, but in the end there was nothing, and he just quietly thought, so that's it. It was so normal that it surprised him. He started thinking about the reason. He said it might sound weird, but even now he might still be connected to his past life. He always thought his life ended when he died, but then he was reborn into this world as Sawadi, walking a completely new life. But that wasn't it. His life as a person didn't really end. It had been connected since his previous life. So, if there was some meaning behind his reincarnation into this world, and if there was something he was supposed to accomplish in this life, then it was all waiting for him somewhere beyond this life. He apologized for not being able to put it into words well, but Lola already understood him. Lola said he shouldn't ask too much of his father. Just having his blessing for their marriage was enough to make her happy. Sawadi said this wasn't impossible. Tomorrow, for sure, he will get him to put it on properly. Meanwhile, his father was working late that day. He decided to stop for today and put his glasses down. He noticed the letter on his desk, but he didn't open it and left his room. The next day, Sawadi slammed the door open and asked his father to name the baby, but his father replied calmly that he was busy. Sawadi sat on the floor and said no matter what, he wouldn't move an inch until he named the baby. His father didn't care at all. Ever since Sawadi found out Lola was pregnant, there had been something he had already decided. He wanted his father, Brett Schenker, head of the Schenker Trading Company, to be the one to name their child. But no matter how many times he asked, he always found an excuse to delay it until today. He said he understood that becoming a name giver was a serious thing for nobles. It meant becoming a guardian figure if something happened to the parents, and it might be a hassle for him. But now that Lola's family wasn't an option, he was the only one Sawadi could rely on. Brett told him that there were other people too, like Astoma, who kindly acted as his matchmaker, or the army officers he had treated. He closed his notebook and stood up while saying that his stubbornness was just like his mother's. He brought 2 wine glasses and wine and told him to sit on the couch. Sawadi listened to him. He told his son that it wasn't like he avoided naming them because of tradition or inconvenience. Sawadi asked the real reason. He only replied with Blackbeard Schenker. He asked if Sawadi had heard that name before. It was his first time hearing it, so Sawadi was quite confused. His father said it was many generations ago, hidden even from historical records, and now he was completely erased from memory and history. Once upon a time, he possessed supernatural powers that were far stronger than magic. He commanded 48 powerful warriors and ruled over a vast land of grain fields, including Torquiva. He used wheat to threaten armies and gain wealth. He even stole the daughter of a great noble who came to defeat him and made her bear his child. He was a great villain and a great hero, and his name was Blackbeard Schenker. That was the ancestor of their Schenker family. Back in Blackbeard's time, this land of grain fields belonged to the commoners. Many times nobles tried to invade and conquer it, but each time they were defeated by Blackbeard and his 48 warriors. In the end, even Blackbeard grew old and lost his power. The nobles quickly took control of the people and the farmland as they do now. At that time, those with Schenker blood, their allies, as well as many commoners who tried to resist, were killed. They say the red rooftops in this town were a leftover mark from that time. Sawadi was puzzled and asked what he had to do with him. At that time, Blackbeard planted a forbidden seed within the people. No longer oppressed by nobles, no longer treated like a slave. A world existed where everyone could choose and live as they pleased. Tit was a seed called freedom. Sawadi was shocked and asked his father if he wanted him to become Blackbeard. Brett told him not to get the wrong idea. He wasn't denying everything he had done, but what freedom truly meant to the people of this country was something he understood better than everyone. Sawadi denied what he said and claimed that he didn't have any kind of great power like that. Besides, right now, this country can't function without mages and it won't survive. Suddenly he recalled what Perseus said to him about growing a beard. His father said there were still people who knew about Blackbeard and the nobles and royals who still see him as a threat. When they see a black-haired child of the Schenker family doing what he was doing, it is easy to imagine what they would think. Even if he personally didn't care, his father was worried that something would happen to Lola or the children about to be born. That's why he asked Sawadi to let go of the Schenker name. He said he was telling him this for his own good. From now on, he should stay away from the Schenker. Sawadi asked about his father and his brothers. He said it was better not to meet as much as possible, and he could explain things to his brothers. He asked what would happen to MSG, and his father said he would take responsibility for it and wouldn't let anything bad happen. Sawadi now understands why he was hesitating. His father was just seriously thinking about them in his own way. After hearing that, there was one thing left for him to say. He said hell no. He said he didn't care about some ancient history, and if he stressed something that stupid, he couldn't survive in a noble society anyway. He said he didn't care about being a Schenker or a noble. He wanted him, Brett, the father of Sawadi, to bless the children who were about to be born. It wasn't just him and Lola, he wanted the kids to feel that even their grandfather wanted them to be born. He slammed himself to the floor and begged his father to name their children as his last selfish request. Sawadi had always carried this regret deep in his heart. In his precious life, he died without leaving anything behind for his parents. That's exactly why, once he decided to carry everything and live alone, he absolutely didn't want to let go of his bond with the Schenkers. The past wouldn't change, it might just be self-satisfaction. But even so, he didn't want to let go of his family. His father remembered that he said they were boy-girl twins. Sawadi eagerly looked at his father as he patted his head and recalled the times when he was learning to walk, running wild however he liked. His eyes teared up seeing how much he had grown up. He asked his son to make sure he looked over the children properly. And with that, their twins were born. One's name was Noah and the other was Lux. Sawadi was so thankful to them for being born healthy. The labor was harsh. Everyone waited patiently for the babies to be born healthy. And Sawadi prayed that Lola would be okay. And when it was finally the time, Sawadi couldn't believe his eyes. In the next scene, Sawadi was saying how tough raising kids is. It was already hard enough with just one, but they had twins, which doubled the trouble. They were super energetic, and just the other day they poked him right in the eye. But he loved them so much it wouldn't even hurt to have them poke him in the eye. Jiren seemed sick of him talking about his kids all the damn time. Sawadi couldn't just stop talking, so she left the room with some excuse. Chikin said she just wanted to check herself and at least show her face once. Chikin could get rid of him, but Jiren was still in the room. Sawadi said he was thinking of getting matching hats next time. She couldn't care less about the hats, but she acted like she did because he was her boss. Sawadi said he wanted the kids to grow up in a world friendly. Even though it was a wonderful thought, Jiren just wanted him to stop talking. When it was time for Sawadi to head home, Jiren was finally relieved. While walking, he looked around and watched people. He was worried at first when he brought in so many male slaves, but it looked like they were doing a great job, so that was a relief. Perseus seemed to be pretty selective this time. For that, he was genuinely grateful. He still had no clue what he was planning, though. He was still as capable as ever, so he decided to keep a close but cautious distance. They also needed to add more middle managers, but he knew he can't rush this kind of thing. Roast called out for him when she saw him. She asked him to have a drink with them. Sawadi was surprised and asked when she had been drinking. Mince had already passed out on the table. Roast was drinking a booze that was over 50% alcohol. It was a popular booze called Hitman. He grabbed it from her hands because she was drinking too much. He also knew she drank without eating anything, so he said he would treat her to some food. They started walking to get something to eat with Roast piggybacking Mince. Roast wondered what it was like becoming a father. They have known him since he was so tiny. It had been 5 or 6 years since they met. He recalled the first time he saw her. Sawadi then told her to come over to his place with the original members next time. He wanted to introduce them to his son and daughter. She was confused about this sudden invitation. He explained that he would give them an early lesson on what drunk people were like. Mince woke up asking when she passed out. The next day, Roast did what Sawadi asked and brought the original team. Sawadi and Lola went out of their room with their babies. His father was also there and greeted Lola. Lola said they were already a family, now there was no need to be so formal. Everyone started holding the Lux one by one, introducing themselves to her. Meanwhile, Sawadi's father was holding Noah. Brett was still wondering if it was the right decision for a grandfather to name his grandchild. It was frustrating, but all he could do was hope for Sawadi and their family's peace. Even so, there was one thing he knew for sure. His grandchild was the cutest in the world. It was time for everyone to see Noah, so he gave him to Sawadi. After meeting the babies, Sawadi told everyone to take their positions and say cheese because they were taking a picture. In the following days, the construction began. While working, Tarsal came. Sawadi was surprised to see him because as far as he knew, he was heading back to his hometown today. He said there was still time before the train, so he figured he would better take a look. He asked if the academy didn't fund the colossal artificial creature project. It looked a bit smaller than he expected. He said this was just the size for the big artificial creature, and the hole they were digging now was for a small artificial creature. He thought they were supposed to build a colossal version of an entire town. The process was to dig a hole, solidify it, and create a small artificial creature. Then use that small artificial to dig a bigger hole, solidify it again, and create a big artificial creature. Then use that big artificial to dig and solidify it again, and that was how they gradually made them bigger and bigger. He thought he explained this before, but he didn't care because he only cared about messing around with its insides. Tursus asked if he was sure about this because the babies were just born, and he was leaving them. He said he would love to be there more, but he still had work to do. And Lola was mentally exhausted from staying at home all day. Besides, Slayra's house had servants too. Even if something happens, he could heal them right away. Back then, Sawadi had no idea what raising a child in this world really meant. He was too used to living in such a privileged environment. At night, one of the servants disturbed them and informed them that Chikin from the Schenker family was there. Chikin apologized for coming so late at night. Sawadi asked what was wrong. She showed Bungo from MSG and her son and her husband. Bungo apologized and said she was begging for a favor from him. He asked what was wrong. Her son was so sick. Sawadi was shocked and asked how long he had been sick. She said he had been sick since yesterday. He asked if she had taken him to a doctor. She responded that people of their status get turned away at the door, but they were able to get help from a former underground doctor who came recently. He examined the baby and said he had done everything he could to cure him, but there was nothing he could do now. The baby's father begged him to do something, but he said even if he wanted to help, there was nothing he could do. They didn't have enough medical equipment, and pushing any further would just make him suffer more. The medicine and potion helped stabilize things temporarily, but that was all he could do. Sawadi asked why they didn't come to him sooner. The father and the baby weren't his slaves, but his wife was working under him. He begged him to save his son. He didn't care what happened to him. He could make his son his slave if he wanted. He just wanted him to save the baby. With Sawadi's one touch, the baby was healed within a second. They thanked him and said they would never forget this kindness. But Sawadi told them to forget this ever happened. He told them that they never came here today and none of this ever happened. He told them to go home and get some rest because the child is fine now. They left his house, and Sawadi sat there for a moment. Lola asked Chicken what the birth rate was like in this world. She said she couldn't say for sure, but it was probably much lower than they imagined. Even if the child was safely born, there was still illness, accidents, murder, abduction, trafficking, and poverty. Because of all that, the odds of reaching adulthood were even lower. He asked if anything like this ever happened in MSG before. Chicken didn't even need to answer him, he was so pissed. Ever since he decided to protect the smiles and happiness of those around him and carry it all on his shoulders, he thought he had come to terms with this other world and lived his life accordingly. But he never considered that the families of slaves weren't part of that. He knew he wasn't someone special. He knew he couldn't save everyone, but he still couldn't help but blame himself for this. When he said that out loud, Lola slapped him hard on the back. She yelled at him, saying that once you are born, you will die eventually. Whether you were close to him or not, didn't matter. She told him that he wasn't a god, and that trying to shoulder everything all on his own like that was a bad habit of his. Sawadi said she was right and that he understood. Lola realized what she said and sat behind his husband. She said words that sound wise didn't always help. There were things she remembered too. All those faces of people she had killed on the battlefield. Calling it justice, calling it a noble cause, she followed orders blindly and kept taking lives. Now that she had thought about it, even they must have had families waiting for them, and people they wanted to protect, people they cared about. And sometimes it felt like the weight of that past was about to crush her. She said he and she both weren't strong enough to carry everything on their shoulders. It might sound selfish, but they can't erase the past. But they must never forget about it. So all they could do was live their lives to the fullest from now on, so that they wouldn't live with regret, and the past wouldn't crush them. Fortunately, he was surrounded by friends who would carry this burden with him. After finishing her speech, she asked what he was going to do. Sawadi slapped himself in the face. He asked Chicken if the former underground Dr. Ophiuchus was skilled. From Perseus and what she had heard from MSG members, he was pretty talented. Sawadi said he would cover the startup and initial operating costs, and with that, they were going to build a hospital. In the next scene, they were done with the hospital and Afika was a nurse there. That is the end of the recap at chapter 31. Please read the pinned comment about the next part.